Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you are watching first part of What If Naruto was born in DXD universe as a devil and have a harem. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
The three factions existed thousands of years ago. These three were all related to each other, in contrast to other supernatural groups that were essentially separate from one another together. The three factions gave rise to the Judeo-Christian faith and were included in the Bible. These three groups were the devils, the fallen angels, and the angels. The biblical god, the four great Satans, and Azazel's fallen angel group, Gremory, led the three factions in what became known as the Great War. The Great War had finally ended with the deaths of the four great Satans and the biblical god, but not without serious repercussions. Only hundreds of fallen angels had perished in the battle, but thousands of angels and devils had as a result. There was intense fighting between the three factions, with each side hoping to re-enter the battle and defeat the others in their weakened state. Both of the forces' leaders did not want to fight a losing battle because they were extremely tired after the Great War, and all three factions had suffered significant losses to their main forces. Therefore, there were no more open conflicts between the three factions, despite the fact that there was no real peace between them. As a result, the devils and angels came up with comparable strategies for enlisting new members. These techniques were called the Brave Saint system, which was based on playing cards, and the Evil Peace system, which was based on the game of chess. Because some devils believed that devils with blood that wasn't pure weren't real devils, the 72 pillars, the 72 main families of pure blood devils, suffered significant losses during the Great War and were whittled down to 34 families of the 34 pure blood families that remained. One family, though, appeared to be the most notable. The Uzumaki clan was the name of that family. The Uzumaki clan's unique ability to subdue hatred made them well known among upper-class families. When a nine-tailed demon fox tried to learn senjutsu on its own, the Uzumaki clan head, Lady Mito Uzumaki, and her husband, Lord Hashirama Senju, head of the Senju clan, successfully subdued the SS-class demon and sealed it using a potent sealing magic spell within Mito Uzumaki. Normally, this power would be considered a minor ability with little to no real-world usage. The Senju and Uzumaki clans received the title of Duke as a result, but the seal would only remain in place until Mito was near death. A young girl named Kushina Uzumaki was one of the Uzumaki. She asked from the clan to serve as the demon fox's jailer. As time went on, Kushina eventually met Minato Namikaze, a young high-class devil who belonged to the Namikaze clan and was the heir apparent to the title of Count. Shortly after they first met, the couple fell in love and got married. After making Minato her knight, Kushina became pregnant with a baby boy very soon after. Unfortunately, the pregnancy had severely weakened the seal, so they had to relocate to a safe location so that Minato could strengthen it with his own magic power while Kushina gave birth. A man with one eye exposed and wearing a spiral mask suddenly materialized. He used their newborn son Naruto as bait to lure Minato away, releasing the nine-tailed fox. Fortunately, Lilith, the capital of the Devil's Domain, was not seriously harmed by the fox's destruction of the surrounding area. Minato, a master of sealing magic, started sealing the fox demon into Naruto's body using a unique seal that nearly depleted his magic. The fox launched a claw toward baby Naruto in a desperate attempt to break free from being sealed away for the third time, but Minato and Kushina, who had both perished to defend their son, stopped it at Naruto's feet. Minato's night piece and Kushina's king piece appeared to drop to the ground before silently crumbling into dust and vanishing with the wind. A family friend of the Uzumaki clan and one of the four great Satans, Sirzechs Lucifer, discovered Naruto sobbing on the ground while wearing a complex seal that was glowing bright red on his navel before vanishing into thin air. His wife, Grayfia Lucifuge, was behind him. She approached the infant boy and held him in her arms, cradling his small body and whispering sweet nothings in his ear until he fell asleep. Sirzechs walked over to his wife with a tender smile. The red-haired man stated, "He looks just like his father, you know," as he gently stroked the mop of blonde, spiky hair. Grayfia nodded and giggled. "He'll be a lady killer for sure." She teased, "You know that just means he's going to inherit his mother's personality, right?" Which made her husband look very pale. The silver-haired woman stated, "I can already tell he's going to be incredibly strong, so much potential in his tiny body," while running her thumb over Naruto's birthmarks, which resembled whiskers. "I wonder how Rias-chan will react to having him around the household." After 8 years, Sirzechs Lucifer endured agony, depression, and torture. As a child, Naruto Uzumaki had gotten along with nearly everyone he encountered in the Gremory household. The young Uzumaki heir was a pleasure to have around the house to liven things up a bit, even for Lord and Lady Gremory, particularly since all of his tricks were directed at Falbium Asmodeus or Sirzechs Lucifer. Even Seraphal Leviathan enjoyed the young boy's antics and occasionally joined in, But now was the moment for Naruto to receive his evil pieces. Sirzech's younger sister, Rias Gremory, had chosen to accompany them merely to have the opportunity to play with Naruto later, and because she had received her evil piece set 2 years prior. 10-year-old Rias Gremory had seafoam green eyes and deep crimson hair. She was about 4 feet tall, while Naruto was about 4 feet 1.5 inches tall. She was only about an inch shorter than Naruto. The castle of Ajuka Beelzebub was approaching, and suddenly Naruto appeared to become more anxious given that Ajuka made each piece specifically for each devil based on how that devil responded to his questions. It made sense, but 2 questions remained constant. After you obtain the evil pieces, what will you do with them? And what is your life's purpose? Even Rias was terrified of Satan Blue when she got her pieces. Before Sirzechs could knock on the door, it swung open to reveal a handsome young man with light blonde hair and deep green eyes smiling down at them. "Welcome," the man said with a devilish tone. "So glad to see you finally come to get your evil piece set, Uzumaki-kun. I've been waiting forever for you to finally come of age to start your peerage." Looking down beside the young blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy, the young Satan noticed Rias holding onto Naruto's hand. "And you brought young Ria Tan with you too. How exciting." Ajuka started to move farther into his lair, as Sirzechs liked to refer to it. The trio followed, though only Naruto seemed to wonder where they were going to. "So, Uzumaki-kun," Ajuka said, breaking the ice, "how do you like things here in the underworld so far?" Naruto gave a shrug. "It's fine, I guess. Except for the weird looks I keep getting from some of the low-class and medium-class devils when I walk through town, I can't really complain." Sirzechs nodded to himself. It wasn't odd to see some of the low-class devils giving Naruto looks of gratitude, though the medium-class families often gave him dirty looks. He was the last of what was essentially a dead clan. Being the only member, many of the pure devil families in the middle class liked to believe that Naruto was simply a commoner riding on the coattails of the Gremory clan and the Uzumaki clan's powerful name. However, Naruto demonstrated that he would not give in to pressure from some of the low-class and medium-class kids who ridiculed him or simply pretended he didn't exist. "But aside from that, I've made lots of friends. Riasheim, Hinata-chan and her twin Hanabi-chan, Haku-chan, and even Yugito-chan and Karen-chan agreed to be my friends." Ajuka grinned, nodding sagely. Hanabi and Hinata were both members of the Hyuga clan, and Hinata was the heiress. Haku was the younger sister of Seraphal Leviathan and Sona Citri. Karen was an Uzumaki, but her mother was a vampire belonging to the Carmilla clan. Yugito was the daughter of Matabi, the two-tailed demon hell cat, one of the 9 great hell demon lords. Additionally, Naruto's best friend in Gremory clan heiress, Rias Gremory, was blushing profusely. All 6 were rather powerful and had connections to influential people. Normally, such a thing would be seen as a potential power play in the 72 Pillars community. However, Ajuka Beelzebub knew about Naruto's special ability, the odd ability to befriend anyone simply with a smile and a few kind words, even Hiyashi Hyuga. The Hyuga clan head, who initially disliked Naruto's presence around his 2 daughters, grew quite fond of him because of the boy's strange and unique power. Perhaps it was an extension of his ability to control hatred. Perhaps there was something about the boy that won over even the most obstinate and despised foes to friendship and support. It was worthwhile to investigate for future use. "I'm so glad to hear you say that, Uzumaki-kun," Ajuka said madly with a chuckle that reminded him of the stories about mad scientists and other fairy tales Lady Lucifuge often read him before putting him to bed for that evening. With a curious frown on his face, Naruto looked up and said, "I've been curious about something for quite some time, Uzumaki-kun. What do you look for in members of your peerage?" Naruto gave a kind smile when Ajuka and the others said, "That's an easy one. I'm looking for good friends." They paused their stroll. Ajuka remarked, "That's a fairly vague answer, Uzumaki-kun. Would you mind clarifying that for me? What constitutes friendship to you?" Naruto's smile seemed to fade a little as he said, "Well, a friend to me is someone who you're willing to protect with everything you have, and someone who would do the same for you. Haku-chan told me that a person can only become strong when they have something precious that they want to protect, something that you would give your life to keep safe. It doesn't matter if they're strong or weak." At this, everyone's smiles became slightly more radiant. "That's a very good answer, Uzumaki-kun. As long as you keep to your beliefs, I know you'll become as strong as Sirzechs." Both children blushed as Rias pulled herself closer to Naruto. Rias was pleased that Naruto thought of her as a valued friend, and Naruto was enamored of her. As they made their way to the main lab where the pieces were made, Ajuka made the decision to ask Naruto the 2 important questions. "Say, Uzumaki-kun, what's your big goal in life? What's your dream?" Knowing the answer by heart, Sirzechs smiled. "I want to become strong enough to become a member of the 4 great Satans and to use that strength to protect the denizens of the underworld. friend or foe, boy or girl, pure blood or mixed blood. Ajuka smiled with delight and anticipation. He now knew why the boy's presence was so joyful and soothing. The reason for this was that Naruto always acted in the best interests of others rather than himself, and this was evident in every word he spoke, every thought he had, and his very demeanor when he moved throughout the underworld. Perhaps the most compassionate devil in the 72 Pillars community was Naruto. The boy was so innocent and selfless that it was shocking that he wasn't an angel. He just absorbed all of that foul stigma and transformed it into joy and happiness, regardless of how many times people ignored him or gave him a glare. Maybe once I take over Sirzechs Gigi's position, I can be Satan Orange. Rias and Ajuka burst out laughing uncontrollably as Sirzechs' head fell and an arrow marked, "Old Man," was jabbed into the back of his skull. Rias asked, "Why Satan Orange?" in between bursts of laughter. Although her laughter wouldn't stop, Rias grinned and said, "Because my mom was a candidate for Satan Red and my dad had yellow hair like me. Red and yellow make orange and orange is an awesome color." She teased, "Does that mean our future child would have orange hair, Naruto-kun?" making him blush and stammer uncontrollably. Sirzechs called out, "I wouldn't mind if Naruto-kun were to be your future husband, Ria-tan," making Naruto and Rias blush more intensely. The two exclaimed, "Oni-sama, Gigi," before Rias and Naruto struck the red Satan in the crotch, causing him to drop to his knees and sob bitterly at the disrespect he received from the two children. Sirzechs was left alone until he got back up and ran up to the passing caravan, while Ajuka kept walking with Rias and Naruto. "Now, Uzumaki-kun," said Ajuka, "once I give you your evil piece set, you can do whatever you want with them so long as it's within the guidelines of the system. What are your plans with the evil pieces I give you?" After a brief moment of confusion, Naruto's expression changed to one of contemplation. "Well, I was planning on asking Hinata-chan, Haku-chan, Hanabi-chan, Yugito-chan, and Karen-chan to join my peerage. We're already really good friends and I want them to get stronger too. Because of their family's standing, Hinata and Hanabi won't be able to get evil pieces until they become high-class devils, and I want to help them make the Hyuga clan stronger. I think Haku-chan always wanted to join my peerage because she kept asking me how long before I got my evil pieces and if I would want her to join my peerage, so I was going to let her join. I know Yugito wants to learn senjutsu and I can help her with that with my power, so I think she'd accept being offered a place in my peerage." Karen, however, Naruto said with a sweat drop falling from his forehead, she said that I didn't have a choice in picking her to be in my peerage. She said she'd find a way to steal one of my evil pieces and join my peerage if I didn't ask her that, and she's been getting really clingy lately and sneaking into my bed to sleep next to me completely naked. When Rias heard this, he started to shake with either unrestrained rage or jealousy since the day they first met. Karen and Rias had been vying for Naruto's affection. Karen was half succubus and half vampire. Despite her youth, she had a very voluptuous body with nearly D-cup breasts and a redhead with ruby red eyes. Rias's breasts, on the other hand, had just begun to form and hardly met the criteria for a B-cup. A blue aura erupted from Naruto's body toward Rias as she started to unconsciously channel her power of destruction in her hand, enveloping her like a hot spring or a warm fire. Rias's power of destruction gradually faded until nothing remained to indicate that it had ever existed. Rias turned to face Naruto, who was grinning at her, and muttered a feeble, "Thank you." But Sirzechs and Ajuka were taken aback and confused. This was the first time that the Gremory clan's power of destruction had been intentionally subdued using the power to subjugate hatred in and of itself. It was a breathtaking sight. They could sense the warmth emanating from both children, even though they were not the target of the blue energy wave. Even Ajuka appeared to be calmed and mesmerized by the spectacle, which was truly a remarkable sight. Eventually, the four devils arrived at the lab. After continuing on their way there after excusing himself, Ajuka went to a computer and typed up the answers to the questions he posed as well as a few other factors that Naruto either mentioned or displayed. Then, he exaggeratedly pressed a single key with his finger. As computers whir to life and glow a bloody crimson, the air is filled with loud pops and buzzes. 10 minutes or so later, a tiny ding reverberates throughout the space, and a complete set of red chess pieces emerges from a warm mist. Naruto approached the fragments and promptly seized the king. The king piece appeared to melt into his body as he examined it, and his eyes appeared to widen in response to a pulse before his stomach started to cramp. His body seemed to be surrounded by a violent red aura. His azure blue eyes became slitted and violent, bloody crimson. His body lurched forward, and the whisker marks on his cheeks seemed to thicken. Sirzechs prepared his own power of destruction. After learning of Naruto's burden, he would quickly destroy Naruto if he lost control or if the nine-tailed fox took control. But before that could happen, A blue aura that turned violet when it came into contact with the demon's repulsive chakra inside his body was pushing down the crimson aura. The whisker marks on Naruto's cheeks had thinned back to normal, and his eyes were gradually returning to normal. Everyone started to calm down, and Sirzech's power of destruction faded into oblivion by the time the red chakra was gone and the blue power was beginning to weaken. With his eyes wide and his breathing labored, Naruto collapsed to his knees. Rias hurried to him and started giving him gentle back rubs. "What?" he said, taking a deep breath to ensure he was breathing steadily. "What was that?" Ajuka and Sirzechs exchanged glances before nodding. Before he could face the young boy, Sirzechs knelt down to Naruto. "What I'm about to tell you, Naruto-kun, is something that only a few other devils know about or even remember. That power you felt, that anger and hatred, belonged to a powerful fox demon. You remember how Matabi-sama and son Goku-sama told you about senjutsu and the dangers of practicing it?" Naruto gave a nod. "Well, the nine-tailed fox thought that because of how powerful it was that it could handle the hatred that came from practicing senjutsu. It was wrong eventually. It was stopped by Mito Uzumaki-sama and her husband, Hashirama Senju-sama, using the power to subjugate hatred and sealing its power within Mito-sama's body. As she got older, she could feel the seal beginning to weaken, so she passed down the mantle to your mother, Kushina." Naruto swallowed the lump in his throat because he had a bad feeling he knew where this was headed. "Kushina, as she gave birth to you, was attacked by a masked individual who used you to lure her husband, Minato-sama, away from her long enough to unseal the demon fox from her body. Before it could rampage further, Minato-sama and Kushina-sama used their strength to seal the fox within your body and died protecting you from a claw that threatened to kill you. Now, as the last Uzumaki with the power to subjugate hatred, the mantle of keeping the underworld safe from its senseless, senjutsu-induced rage belongs to you." She added, "He's right, Uzumaki-kun, Ajuka Beelzebub. Not even I knew what would happen once your body accepted the king piece. Apparently, it just barely weakened the seal just enough to give the fox a false sense of hope, and it chose to try to break free. But your amazing power stopped it just before anything seriously dangerous happened. I must ask if you would be willing to allow me to study your seal and your power. It may be of some help in discovering how your power is able to actually subjugate an emotion like anger and hatred." Despite his hesitation, Naruto nodded. He and the Uzumaki clan's future would both benefit from knowing more about how his power operated. Ajuka made a formal bow, but his crazy smile remained fixed on his face. "Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity to study your clan's abilities. I look forward to your visits in the future." Sirzechs called out, "Now, if you would gather the rest of your pieces, Naruto-kun." As he watched Naruto put the knights, rooks, bishops, and queen in his right pants pocket and all of his pawns in his left, Sirzechs looked up at his best friend and waved goodbye to the scientist, saying, "I believe it's time to head home, children." Ajuka said, "I look forward to watching your raiding games, Uzumaki-kun and Ria-tan," with a friendly but frightening smile that threatened to split his face in two. He had already made his first servant, friend, less than a day after receiving his evil pieces. As promised, Karen had insisted that he make her his servant as soon as he returned to the Gremory estates with Sirzechs, Lucifer and Rias. Naturally, Rias became quite enraged and threatened to vaporize Karen before her hand would come into contact with the piece. Naruto intended to give her. Karen responded by threatening to electrocute the crimson-haired ruined princess until a black electrical current flowed over her hands, causing her heart to explode inside her chest and her mosquito-bite tits to burst in her own extremely selective and vulgar words. When Naruto attempted to break up the fight, Karen glomped him, taking the bishop piece from his pants pocket rather than the queen she was pursuing. To be honest, she didn't care which piece she received. If you understand the double meaning, all she wanted to do was serve Naruto. After being reminded that it would have happened eventually one way or another by both Naruto and Sirzechs, who was at the time mysteriously smiling like a pervert, Rias, who was incensed that her red-headed rival had simply circumvented Naruto's choice in the matter, gave in. Naruto acknowledged that he had originally intended to make Karen a bishop, if only to cheer her up. As a vampire and a succubus, her innate love of magic made any other decision, in his opinion, rather stupid. Karen had been unable to leave Naruto's side since that day. Haku continued to cling to his body like a leech. Even after he offered her as his pawn, she reluctantly left him to ask the other members of his group to become his peers only after Naruto asked her to clean up the Uzumaki estates as a favor. He then went to see Matabi and her only daughter, Yugito Ni, to extend an invitation for her to become a member of his peerage. He could sense a great deal of rage coming from the direction of Matabi's house as soon as he stepped into the Nekomata tribes in Matabi's territory. Naruto used his power to subjugate hatred while running as quickly as he could, Covering himself in a layer of blue energy before kicking open Matabi's house door, he witnessed Matabi engaged in combat with a savage Yugito. There he sent 2 energy blasts to the Hellcat and her daughter, radiating his power, and gradually started to work on their anger. Matabi's anger was short-lived, so he knew it wasn't due to Senjutsu. But Yugito was much more difficult to deal with. She was immobile due to his power, but the intensity of the rage radiating from her made him think of what Son Goku had told him about Senjutsu practicing demons and their experiences. Naruto sprinted over and gave Yugito a firm embrace, preventing her arms from moving more than an inch from her sides. When he was able to make physical contact with the target, his power was significantly stronger. Yugito's rage gradually subsided as the minutes went by. Yugito's body started to sag until all of the rage was gone and she regained control over her body. She turned back to Naruto, exhausted. In order to identify herself as Matabi's daughter, she wore her medium-length blonde hair in a ponytail that split into 2 distinct tails. Despite being grateful that Naruto was there to watch over her, her black eyes showed complete exhaustion. She had barely recovered from the effects of practicing Senjutsu when she passed out, less than 30 minutes later. She was trying to introduce her to Senjutsu and Yujutsu gradually rather than all at once, Matabi explained as she described what had happened. Unfortunately, Yugito was sent off the deep end by even a small amount of manageable hatred that resulted from learning Senjutsu. Yugito noticed Naruto sitting in a chair directly across from her, grinning worriedly, as she moaned and put her hand on her neck. Matabi, in the shape of a house cat, sat on his shoulders. "Hey, Neko-chan," Naruto exclaimed. "I'm glad to see you're feeling well." Yugito coughed dryly and tried to speak. She greedily drank the glass of water he handed her. She finished the glass and placed it on the table beside her bed. She said, "Thank you, Naruto-kun," with a slightly raspy voice. "It's no problem, Neko-chan. I'm just glad you weren't hurt trying to practice something so dangerous and that nobody else was hurt either," he said with kindness. Yugito appeared somewhat melancholy. "I'm sorry about worrying you, Naruto-kun, and I'm sorry I couldn't control myself, Mama," Yugito replied indignantly. "You have nothing to apologize for, Yugi-hime," Matabi remarked. "I thought you were ready for Senjutsu training, but I didn't realize just how it would affect you until you started to channel nature chakra." Matabi turned to gaze at Naruto. "And I owe you quite a lot. Naruto-kun, you saved my daughter and myself. Please, if there is anything I can do within my power, I'll grant it." Naruto gave a nod. "I understand and I appreciate the gesture, Matabi-sama, but I only came here to offer Yugito-chan the chance to join my Peerage. Haku-chan and Karen-chan already accepted, though I wish Karen-chan wouldn't have done it so forcefully. Haku-chan is one of my pawns and Karen-chan is one of my 2 bishops. I was hoping you would want to be one of my pawns as well, Yugito-chan." Yugito reddened violently. She was already aware of Karen's feelings for Naruto. Haku as well. She couldn't understand why the poor lug didn't notice. Regretfully, she also developed feelings for Naruto Uzumaki. He was a kind man. He was kind to her and his other pals. In addition, he carelessly put himself in danger to prevent her from doing something she would later regret. She nodded and gave a feeble smile when Naruto produced one of his pawns. He saw that something was strange about it. Nevertheless, he handed it to her and started chanting, "Yugito ni, as per the contract we have agreed upon, you will be my servant until such a time as we both feel that the terms of the contract have been fulfilled. Do you agree to these conditions?" Naruto said. Yugito nodded and grinned. She winked and said, "I agree to the terms and conditions we have set in the contract. I shall be your servant until said terms of the contract have been fulfilled. Treat me well, master," making the young man blush. "Very well then, I, Naruto Uzumaki, accept you as my pawn. Follow me and may happiness always fill your heart for the rest of your days." A warmth permeated the air as the pawn blended with Yugito's body, causing her body to cease glowing red and revert to its initial state. Her bust appeared to have grown slightly from a large B cup to a modest C cup, and her hair was a bit longer than it had been before. Yugito joyfully glomped Naruto and pressed her amazing bust into his arm after the transformation was complete. In the end, Naruto's body fell to the ground and his nose spurted blood out of his left nostril. He whispered, "Pervy pawnpiece," to no one. Yugito didn't realize what he meant until she looked down, at which point her face turned as red as a tomato. When Yugito and Matabi eventually managed to wake Naruto up after a few minutes, Yugito repeatedly slammed him in the skull for being a pervert and getting giddy over her enlarged bust. Then, because of the strange power in the piece, he mentioned that he liked her bust size prior to the expansion. He was chastised once more for what she took to be an admission that he frequently glanced at her breasts when they were young. Yugito and Naruto were eventually dismissed after everyone laughed at their interactions and the apologies that followed. However, Matabi had to make them both blush once more by mentioning that he wanted multiple litters of grandchildren from them. It goes without saying that the walk between them to the Uzumaki estates was rather awkward. Neither could look the other in the eye, and when they did, Naruto would blush or Yugito would blush and glare if she thought he was trying to see how much her breasts had grown. He saw Rias sitting in a love seat, glaring at Karen, who was only wearing an apron, as soon as he entered the long-since closed Uzumaki clan estates, which Sirzechs had claimed he inherited and was just waiting to give him when he got his evil piece set. Haku, on the other hand, was dressed in a rather skimpy French maid outfit that highlighted her C-cup breasts, which typically make her look like a boy to other devils. She had no trouble showcasing the skills she had been honing over the previous 12 years, though, because she was already Naruto's servant and could not be claimed by another devil. Since Karen was essentially nude and Hakuya, whom Yugito had initially assumed to be a boy due to his or her lack of breast development, was actually a girl with fairly large breasts, Yugito just watched in either shock or embarrassment. Rias looked down and started squeezing her own B-cup breasts, either out of shame for attempting to compare to Haku, Karen, and Yugito, or because she thought Naruto preferred big-breasted girls. She saw Naruto and Yugito standing there when she turned to see who had entered. In actuality, she was the only one who was unaware of Naruto's ignorance. Karen left the stove unattended and hurried over as soon as Naruto said hello. She put his head between her breasts and gave him a gentle hug. When Yugito and Rias started fighting over Naruto and who he liked better, Naruto hardly realized what was going on. Happy to keep the house from burning to the ground, Haku just laughed to herself before going over and shutting off the stove. Until Karen's fists sparked with black electricity, Rias' fists glowed with a crimson-black aura, and Yugito's fists began to burn with a ghostly blue fire. For some reason, Naruto was unaware that the three were getting ready to murder each other in order to demonstrate that their love for him outweighed that of the other girls, and for some reason, his ability to subdue hatred didn't even attempt to soothe the three of them. Haku let out a sigh and lifted a hand, gesturing with her palm toward the three combatants below them. A magic seal materialized. And then a huge iceberg swallowed the three of them. Naruto-kun, Haku uttered, her voice ringing melodiously, "Dinner's ready." Naruto hurried to the dinner table, where a large bowl of ramen was waiting for him. Upon hearing Haku call out, he saw the three empty spots and turned to see his three friends covered in ice and shivering. "Could you please release them, Haku-chan?" Naruto blushed slightly as Haku laughed. He had never heard a voice as lovely as Haku's. Even though he was having a bad day, her laughter made him smile and her joy brightened his. Karen was shivering by the time the three had thawed out, but she curled up with Naruto because she always claimed that he made her feel warm and that his magic power was as warm and brilliant as the summer sun. But in order to warm themselves from being flash frozen, Yugito and Rias were eating their own warm bowls of ramen. Yugito made this even better by lighting her hands on fire and rubbing them all over her body. "This is some of the best ramen I've ever had," told Naruto. "You did really well, Karen-chan." Yugito and Rias glared at Karen as she blushed under the praise. She purred as she said, "Thank you, master. I learned from Grayfia-sama and added my own little twist to it." "Whatever you added tastes awesome, Karen-chan," he exclaimed. "I'll be sure to write down the recipe for future reference, master," she added. "Maybe later on tonight we can have dessert, just the two of us in your room." Naruto smiled, utterly unaware of what she was implying. "I'd love to have dessert with you, Karen-chan. If it's anything like your ramen, I'm sure I'll enjoy it." Karen gave a twisted laugh. "Oh no, master, the pleasure will be all mine." At Karen's obvious attempt to have sex with Naruto, Yugito squinted. Haku appeared to suddenly recall something she had been asked to share with Naruto. Haku called out, "Naruto-kun," to divert his focus from Karen's overt flirtation. Naruto's eyes glowed before he rose from his seat at the small table. "Hiyashi-sama asked me to tell you that he approves of you asking Hinata-chan and Hanabi-chan to join your peerage. In fact, he seemed fairly eager to let them make the decision themselves." He said, "Thanks, Haku-chan." In a hurry he turned to Karen and said, "I'll head down there right away." He appeared to be truly sorry. "I'm sorry, Karen-chan, but I'm going to have to take a rain check on that desert date in my room. Forgive me?" Karen sighed in disappointment, but she couldn't be mad at Naruto. She loved him. "It's fine, master, but you owe me and I intend to collect one day." Naruto laughed. "You know I'll never go back on my word." He then bolted from the house and made his way to the Hyuga estates. Because of their skill in combat and their capacity for compromise, the Hyuga clan was one of the clans bestowed the title of Knight. The clan head, Hiyashi Hyuga, was a rather strict individual who always wanted the best for his clan. He was terrified of the shame that would accompany being associated with the heir to the Uzumaki clan and the jailer of the most powerful demon lords. When Hinata and Hanabi first became friends with Naruto, however, as he got to know Naruto, he realized his mistakes. He could tell Hinata was in love with him because of how bashful she was around him, although Hanabi's tsundere behavior toward Naruto wasn't particularly subtle either. He accepted Naruto's first request to ask them to become his peerage because he cared for the endearing idiot in addition to securing his daughter's futures. Their agreement would raise the Hyuga clan's profile within the 72 Pillars community. Hiyashi let Naruto sit in the commons while Lord Hyuga went to get his daughters after he answered the door and saw him standing there grinning while holding the queen and a pawn. Not much was needed. The twin sisters instantly ran down when Naruto mentioned that he was there with a proposal for them, assuming he would pop the question to them both. By the time Hiyashi arrived, his daughters were grinning contentedly and 2 red magic circles were disappearing beneath their feet. I welcome you into my peerage, Hinata, my gentle queen, and Hanabi, my faithful pawn. In the name of Naruto Uzumaki, I ask that you both follow me and may happiness always find you for the rest of your days. Together, the two said, thank you, master, please take care of us. Hiyashi smiled warmly at the 3 of them and clapped his hands together. Yes, Naruto-kun, he firmly replied, please take good care of my daughters, their lives are in your hands now. After giving both girls a nod, Naruto explained that they would be residing in the Uzumaki estates and could come see their father whenever they pleased. After kissing Naruto and Hiyashi on the cheeks, the 2 girls hurriedly packed their belongings and traveled to his house via a transportation circle. The Hyuga twins had been a part of Naruto Uzumaki's peerage for a week. It appeared that Hinata and Haku got along well, talking and helping each other with tasks they were not used to doing. They would spend time together. Haku taught Hinata how to cook, and Hinata taught Haku how to use specific herbs to make medicinal tinctures and potions. Hanabi, on the other hand, had the best relationship with Rias, but this was largely due to the same factor. Both felt inferior due to their smaller chests. Naturally, they banded together to show themselves and the other girls that Naruto wasn't just partial to bustier women. Unfortunately, this meant that Hanabi and Rias would frequently argue with Yugito and Karen about Naruto's preferences regarding the appearance of his future wife or girlfriend. Since that seemed to be the only thing Naruto's peerage had, they all agreed that he appeared to like girls with longer hair. Surprisingly, Yugito thought Naruto liked blonde girls because his father had blonde hair, and Hanabi thought he liked girls with blackish blue hair. Rias and Karen, on the other hand, thought he liked girls with red hair because his mother had red hair like theirs. Since Karen was a few inches taller than Hinata, Yugito, Haku, and Naruto, and Hanabi and Rias were the 2 shortest. No one could agree on height preferences. Yugito was only an inch taller than Naruto and the 2 good-natured girls, while Haku and Hinata were roughly the same height as Naruto. Naruto must have recognized something in each of the 4 girls to ask them to join his peerage, so despite all of this bickering, they had a reluctant respect for one another. They were a little envious of Karen's inherent beauty and her proficiency with some potent ice and lightning spells. Some of the girls were envious of Yugito because of her inherent strength and agility. For Hanabi, it was the ease with which she moved because she was carrying a large tray of food for their dinner. She would bend so gracefully that none of the food ever spilled, or she would float around people who nearly ran into her as they passed one another just walking through the house. It was a mix of factors for Rias. She came from a famous family. One of the 4 great Saiyans was her brother. She had known Naruto for a longer time than most. Many of the girls were envious of her relationship with Naruto because of all of these factors combined. Fortunately, the 4 girls rarely fought over Naruto, with Haku freezing them in a giant glacier or Hinata accidentally hitting them in the head with a frying pan before warning them that their pointless arguments would destroy the Uzumaki estates. Hinata and Haku both agreed that they would be willing to share Naruto's harem, as they casually called it once or twice, with the other girls in his peerage if he ever wanted to rebuild the Uzumaki clan. One evening, they were enjoying a quiet evening with their friends when there was a knock on the door during dinner. This led to an unusual meeting. After getting up to load her dishes in the dishwasher, Haku went to the front door and opened it to find Lady Grayfia Lucifuge and Sirzechs Lucifer standing there grinning broadly. At least until Sirzechs noticed the different girls' attire. Haku was wearing her standard French maid attire. Karen was only wearing a purple thong and an apron. Hinata's burgeoning bust almost protruded from her extremely skimpy schoolgirl attire. Hanabi was dressed as a lowly goth through holes in the back of her very short skirt and white halter top. Yugito's 2 tails were visible. Rias was the only person not wearing a kinky dress, and that was because she didn't spend enough time there to voluntarily keep some kinky clothes there. Naturally, she had some in her home, but she was aware that she would never be able to leave without someone asking where she was going and why she was wearing something so skimpy. The friendly smile on Sirzechs' face quickly became twisted. My, Naruto-kun, he uttered. I never knew you would order these girls to wear something so kinky. You naughty boy. I'm so pro. was roughly how far he went before Grayfia clocked him, causing the strong demon to crash face first into the sidewalk. Wondering why Sirzechs would say such a thing, Naruto raised an eyebrow. I didn't order them to wear that, they are grown women, they can dress themselves however they want to arrow Gigi. For a brief moment, Grayfia was almost certain that she was grateful that Naruto had such a deep understanding of women and that her husband's remark didn't make him think of anything obscene when she saw the 2 arrows that were now protruding from Sirzechs' back and read, "Pervert," and "Old man." She did laugh. "I'm sorry for intruding on your dinner, Uzumaki-sama," Grayfia said briefly, "but my husband and I were here wondering if you and your peerage would like some training and an explanation on how the evil peace system worked, as well as to learn your duties that you all will have to carry out in the future." The idea of a Satan teaching him the devil's ways made Naruto smile. Even the typically quiet and shy Hinata appeared genuinely thrilled to be studying under the strongest queen. "Of course. Grayfia Oni-sama," Naruto exclaimed. "I'd love to learn from you and arrow Gigi. Isn't that right, girls?" Like Naruto, all of the girls appeared to nod enthusiastically. "You didn't get to train and learn under such powerful individuals very often." "See? We're all ready to train, Oni-sama." Grayfia laughed. "All right, meet us in the backyard of the Gremory estate at 10 in the morning. I look forward to seeing your peerage in action, Uzumaki-sama." Naruto let out a moan. "How many times do I have to tell you? Grayfia Oni-sama, just call me Naruto-kun. The other servants at the Gremory estate do that now, why can't you?" She said. "Very well, Naruto-kun." Giving him the point for the time being, she took her husband by the leg and dragged him down 5 flights of stairs, making sure his face struck each one as she said, "We'll see you at 10. Come along, husband." Together with Rias, Naruto laughed and closed the door. Arrow Gigi's funny when he makes Grayfia Oni-sama mad. No one in the estate heard the sound of 2 more arrows striking Sirzechs. "I know," Rias said with a laugh. "You'd think he'd have learned by now not to upset her, but he still finds some way to say something stupid to upset her." "Hey, Naruto-kun," Yugito yelled. "Why do you call Lady Lucifuge, Grayfia Oni-sama? Are you and Rias already?" Rias blushed a brilliant red that mimicked her hair color before looking off with a dreamy face, but Naruto shook his head in the negative. "Nope, it's just that Grayfia Oni-sama and Sirzechs arrow Gigi took me in after I was born, since they were friends of my parents since before they died. She's always been my Oni-sama. Once I found out how old Sirzechs was, I just started calling him Gigi or arrow Gigi." 5 more arrows hit Sirzechs about halfway to the Gremory estate. "In the end, they treated me like family, so I'll treat them like family." "Ah," Karen exclaimed as she drifted over to embrace Naruto. She said, "That story gave me the warm fuzzies. You know," in a tone that was extremely sexual. "If you want, you can treat me like family, master." "You already are family, silly, remember? Your father is my mother's cousin, so all in all, you are family," Naruto grinned. "But master," she touched his chest with her finger, "don't you want to be closer to me than that?" Naruto stumbled. "Yeah. Karen Chan," he said. "Ho, how close are you talking about?" "I don't know, maybe." Unfortunately, before she could go much farther, Hinata appeared behind her, smashed a frying pan over her head, and the poor girl was rendered unconscious. The young queen said, "I'm sorry, Karen-chan," in a tone that was almost joyful. Hinata looked over at a very red Naruto with a slight nosebleed and said, "My hand slipped. Try not to bleed all over the floor again or I'll make you clean it up." She pulled a small rag out from between her breasts, making them jiggle a little, before wiping the blood away, ignoring the small fact that her future husband was currently having perverted thoughts due to a lustful second cousin who was 4 years younger than her. "You need to get some sleep if we're going to make it to the Gremory estate on time tomorrow morning for training, Naruto-kun." Karen appeared to be mostly unconscious on the ground, and the frying pan appeared to mysteriously vanish from Hinata's grasp as Naruto blinked owlishly. Naruto was grinning almost ecstatically by the time Hinata finished speaking, oblivious to what had just transpired in front of him just a few seconds before. Hinata laughed and nodded, saying, "Of course. Hinata-chan, I am feeling a little tired. Can't train properly if you're tired, right?" Hanabi came up to Naruto as he was making his way to his bedroom and pulled at his shirt. He turned to face the girl and saw that she was looking down and away from him, as if she was a little embarrassed by the question she wanted to ask him. "Can Hinata and I sleep in your room tonight, Naruto-kun?" she said firmly. Naruto tilted his head sideways. He was frequently invited to sleep over by Hinata and Hanabi, but after their mother died. Naruto smiled kindly and nodded. Naruto whispered, "Of course, Hanabi-chan," and then he kissed her forehead, making her glow like a firecracker. "It's been quite some time since we last had a sleepover, hasn't it?" Hanabi nodded, her blush remaining unabated. The blushing girl said, I'll tell Hinata Oni-chan and we'll meet you in your room. After that, she hurried to tell Hinata what she had asked Naruto, and both of them let out a happy squeal after grabbing Hanabi's hand. Hinata led her to their room, where they began trying on a number of nightgowns before hurriedly returning to the master bedroom, where Naruto was waiting for them both. With the black comforter wrapped around his body, Naruto lay down in the center of a king-size bed, leaving a lot up to the two girls' imagination. While Hanabi wore a slightly more conservative outfit consisting of a dark blue nightgown and sky blue underwear, Hinata wore a lavender lace nightgown and a slightly darker purple thong. Hearing the door open, Naruto flushed as his gaze was free to roam over the Hyuga sisters' hardly hidden bodies while Hinata appeared to either ignore or permit Naruto's gaze to roam over her luscious body. Hanabi appeared almost ashamed to let him see her in this manner. The Hyuga twins approached Naruto's bed and slipped under the bulky comforter Hinata to his right, cradling and curling her body into his, and Hanabi to his left, facing the direction his back was facing. Even though Naruto was anxious about having two attractive women close to him, the lights were turned off and the three of them bid each other good night. Despite everything, Naruto managed to calm his nerves and put his arms around Hinata, and Hanabi did the same before sleep soon surrounded the three of them. The following day, Sirzechs and Grayfia were standing across from Naruto and his peerage as they sat in the Gremory estate's garden with Grayfia was standing beside Sirzechs, who was grinning at them. As you all know, there are 15 pieces in an evil piece set: 2 rooks, 2 knights, 2 bishops, a queen and 8 pawns. Now, what you might not know is that each of these pieces has special abilities unique to them. Rooks have powerful defense and strength. They act as tanks on the battlefield. Their only weakness is that they aren't very fast, and anyone who is faster than them can easily avoid their blows and land their own until the rook in question is incapacitated. Knights are renowned for their impressive speed, Grayfia remarked. They usually use a weapon of some sort to improve their attacking capabilities, usually a sword or a spear. Their weakness is their lack of strength and defense. A few powerful blows will put them out of commission. Next up are the bishops, Sirzechs said, looking straight at Karen. Bishops have incredible magic ability and are typically used in support roles, provided they know some kind of healing magic or have a healing ability unique to them. Last, but certainly not least, is the queen, Grayfia remarked. The queen has the abilities of the rook, knight, and bishop. While most queens focus on strengthening one skill above the others, I myself have managed to bring all of my skills to the level of those pieces who have trained their skills to their maximum level. It's why I have been granted the title of the strongest queen. That is about all there is to say about the royal pieces, said Sirzechs. Our last piece is what most people believe to be the weakest piece. The pawns, while they don't experience a powerful increase in skills like the other pieces do, they have an ability unique to them. It's the ability of promotion. You see, like in chess, when a pawn reaches enemy territory, they can promote themselves to either a bishop, a rook, a knight, or even a queen. Similarly, a king, Naruto and Rias, can promote a pawn of their own free will to any of these roles in the middle of battle. This makes pawns very valuable. Unfortunately, pawns cannot be promoted in the middle of a ranking exam, regardless of whether they are in their enemy's territory or with their king's permission. Now, each evil piece has a set value to it, called Grayfia. Queens are worth 9 pawns, rooks are worth 5 pawns, bishops and knights are both worth 3 pawns apiece. These values are typically used when devils trade pieces with one another. Naruto gave a nod. He had always picked things up surprisingly quickly when they were explained to him, but he preferred to practice over reading books. Sirzechs and Grayfia smiled and said, so if the rook is the tank, the knight is the cavalry, the bishop is the spell-slinging mage, and the queen is the ultimate balance, then the pawn is a jack of all trades and a master of none, right? You're a sharp tack, Naruto-kun, Grayfia observed. Yes, while the pawn may never be able to master all of the skills due to the constant shifting of their skill sets, they are still able to build up their skills to a sufficient degree that they can become the most well-rounded pieces in the game, capable of taking even the strongest queen by surprise. Now that you know about your roles, you should understand that there are 3 different ways to get stronger. The first is by performing contracts for humans. This is typically how newly turned devils get stronger, Sirzechs said prior to providing an explanation. Contracts are usually given out through flyers by devils. These contracts are activated by a wish made either vocally or mentally by a human. This wish is imprinted on the seal on the flyer, turning it red when it is used. The contracts themselves tend to be simply jobs: mowing a person's lawn, getting a cat out of a tree, having a devil dress up in an outfit and pose for them. Stuff like that. However, there are occasionally people who will try to use these contracts in degrading and derogatory ways. Contracts that humans make involving having sex with a devil or getting the devil to provide other sexual services such as stripteases, lap dances, or other such services will not activate the seal on the contract, and the contract will turn completely black and disappear into ash. The person who made the wish will have an invisible seal placed on their hands, and any contracts that they touch will turn to ash. Now, by completing the contracts and getting the client to declare the wish fulfilled will grant the king and the servant who accomplished the task a very small boost in their devil powers. Contracts are the slowest way that devils use to get stronger, but it is by far the most commonly used method. The second method is to train and improve your skills, Grayfia said. This is accomplished through rigorous methods. Casting spells until your magic reserves are almost completely drained is a method most bishops, pawns, and queens use to increase their magic reserves and decrease the amount of mana needed to cast the spell until it becomes second nature and requires only a small amount of mana. Now, the more mana you place into the spell, the more powerful it becomes, but this is a double-edged sword, since if you place all of your mana in one blast, you would quickly become a sitting duck with nothing else to rely on. To train one's strength and endurance, sparring and exercise typically increases these attributes. However, skilled rune mages could create a rune that would increase the gravity on one's body, which would help to increase strength by making a devil's muscles work harder, thus increasing their strength. To train one's body to improve your defenses is much harder, since it would normally require the devil in question to stand still and endure being physically assaulted. Neither of these methods are recommended, since it would potentially cripple the devil in question without a healer to assist in the repair of the wounds. The devil using these methods would undoubtedly suffer. The girls all looked pale, but Naruto seemed truly interested in rune magic. Speed training is as simple as running as fast as you can as far as you can before you get tired again. A special rune known as the resistance rune could help you train this by making your body feel as if you were running through water, mud, or any sort of thick substance depending on the level of the rune in question. While not as extreme as the gravity rune training method, it is still suggested to use extreme caution and not perform this sort of training without a healer nearby. Sirzechs gave his wife's assessment a nod. Now, while training isn't as slow as contracts in helping devils get stronger, it is significantly more dangerous. The final method of increasing in strength is what we devils call the rating games. During a rating game, two devil kings and their peerage face one another in combat. During this battle, no permanent injuries are sustained, but they are felt. The winner is the first one to force either the opposing king to surrender or to defeat the king in combat. Now, as it stands, Naruto and Rias are far too young to even begin to think about taking part in a rating game for several more years. Rating games, however, while the most dangerous method, is the fastest way to rise through the ranks and become a high-class devil like Naruto, Rias, and me. If you perform well, even if your king is forced to surrender or is defeated, then you can still be considered for a promotion. A victory, on the other hand, would almost assure you of a promotion unless your performance was incredibly poor, you were killed early on in the game, or you performed well at the cost of an ally or fellow servant, Grayfia calmly said. Although it had only been 15 minutes, the group nodded, even though it felt like they had been force-fed information for the previous few hours. Sirzechs turned to face his wife and said, "For now, that's enough educating you lot. Now, it comes down to some basic training. Normally, it wouldn't be fair for either Grayfia or me to train you, but since only Rias knows some of the basics after being trained by our father, Lord Gremory, I feel it only fair that we teach you some of the basics. Grayfia, my love, I trust you to train them as best you can. There is more that I have to teach Naruto about being a king and the responsibilities that comes with it." Astonished for a moment, Grayfia nodded and led Hanabi, Karen, Yugito, Haku, Hinata, Karen, and Rias into the Gremory estates, then to the training gym where they would start combat training. Taking Naruto by the shoulder, Sirzechs escorted him out of the Gremory estates and down a deserted street. He said, "Naruto," with a solemnity that even Naruto found unsettling. As the heir of the Uzumaki clan, you have to understand several things that should have been taught to you by your parents. Among those things are strategy, battle tactics, politics. Much as I hate to believe that children your age need to be subjected to the brutality of backstabbing and backroom politics. Your clan, from what I can remember of them, were very self-sufficient. They made friends and felt the need to blackmail lords and ladies of high-class families to increase one's standing to be lowly and pathetic. They made friends and close relations with other families, though the Gremory clan was one of the few high-class families they cared deeply for. Naruto gave a nod. Politics was an abhorrent thing. It turned good people into vile, and vile people into the underworld's scum. When elected, politicians could hardly be relied upon to honor their commitments, and when they did, it was always to the politician's advantage rather than that of the electorate. Lord Hiyashi has been teaching me a few things about politics from time to time. Sirzechs appeared to moan. It would have been in his best interests to, Naruto. He knew you would be asking his daughters to join your peerage for a while now by teaching you about politics. He helped both you and himself. It would have been foolish on his part not to teach you and allow you to fumble around in the dark while clans only interested in your power and wealth stole from you blindly. You should continue the lessons when you can spare some time between training and studying. The red-haired devil took out a filthy tome and opened it up for Naruto for study. To Sirzechs' amusement, Naruto blew off the book and then walked through the dense cloud of dust, sneezing as he went. The Art of War by Sun Tzu? Who's that? He was a brilliant strategist and military tactician. He wrote that book one day when I offered to assist him in one of the wars he fought in, Sirzechs remarked with a warm smile as the memories appeared to come to the forefront of his thoughts. In that book is some of the best information a king and a high-class devil such as yourself could ask for despite its age. The information within is still used by military leaders today. If you can commit that to memory, then nothing will be able to stop you save for a god or one of the four great Satans. The lump in Naruto's throat was swallowed for Sirzechs. This book held great significance. It was simple to understand why he therefore made a commitment to read it before turning in for the night. He was unaware that Sirzechs had dug into his front breast pocket and taken out 3 items. The third one appeared to be a heavy book, much bigger than the last one he gave the young boy, while the other 2 appeared to be notebooks. Before giving them to Naruto, he considered the possibility of doing so. After glancing at the 2 smaller books, Naruto turned the pages and began to read. He didn't realize what they were or who owned them. For several minutes his breathing appeared to pause in his chest as his hands started to shake violently. He then wrapped his arms around the 3 books and held them close to his chest out of fear that they would vanish forever if he let them go. Satan Red said, "Those are your parents' journals, Naruto-kun," with a trace of regret. "Originally, I was supposed to give them to you when you turned 18, but with the events that you've been through and the things you've discovered about yourself, I feel like you have the right to know your parents on a personal level instead of hearing stories about their adventures from Grayfia and me." He breathed deeply and quickly let it out. That larger tome contains all of your parents' work on understanding rune magic and wind magic, both fairly unknown magics in the underworld. By practicing the things in that tome, I have no doubt that you can become a strong devil and a powerful king. It may even help you become a member of the 4 great Satans. Huh? Tears started to fall from Naruto's eyes as his hair obscured them. Naruto rushed over and put his small arms around the elder devil's hips. After placing the books in a backpack, Naruto stepped back from the stunned redhead and gave Sirzechs a low glare. "If you mutter one word about that to Grayfia Oni-sama, I'll ask Karen to tie you down to a pole and continuously strike it with her evil spark spell until your heart stops and starts 50 times before untying you and making you walk around Lilith naked. Got it, Arrow Gigi?" Before he left with his young ward, Sirzechs Lucifer merely ruffled the boy's hair and laughed. Kushina and Minato bounced ideas and magic formulas from Naruto's grimoire as they made their way back to the house. Everything seemed to make perfect sense to him. Somehow the man appeared to lose his way at some point. Even when he attempted to explain some of it to the Red Satan, Naruto was eager to use the Uzumaki estates to practice the spells he had read about. He needed to read a great deal. The 2 men could swear they heard electricity humming in the air around them by the time they arrived at the Gremory clan house's front door. This was followed by other strange noises that could only indicate something was being destroyed. Sirzechs opened the door to the training room and appeared to be unlucky enough to get struck in the face by a black lightning bolt. Ignoring the agony of the groaning man, Naruto approached the girls, grinned, and waved. He boldly said, "Hey, girls," despite the fact that the black bolt of lightning nearly struck him. "How has your training been coming along?" he asked, opening his eyes to see that Yugito's blue fire had seriously damaged both Karen's and Ria's clothing, leaving them with some scorch marks. Yugito was struck by a lightning bolt or 2, as evidenced by her extremely frizzy hair and sparks emanating from it. Rias appeared to have taken the least amount of damage, which suggested that she had either won their fight or had just watched Yugito and Karen spar before a stray fireball struck her and began to burn away her clothing. In some way, Rias's and Karen's clothing was hanging on by a thread. Karen screamed and ran to Naruto as soon as she realized he was in the room. Her top mysteriously appeared to tear the only piece that was left, if only just when she was halfway to him, and Karen pushed Naruto's face into her breasts. "Oh, master," she sobbed in pain. "It's been so hard trying to concentrate without you here to keep me company." When Grayfia saw Naruto start to suffocate between Karen's enormous, for her age, breasts, she began to perspire. "You were doing fine until he showed up," she deadpanned. Haku had been learning from Grayfia how to use her ice magic in ways the young pawn had not yet considered, and Hinata was gradually improving both her magic and her speed by making herself cast spells while moving and attempting to be precise. Though it was moving slowly, progress was undoubtedly being made. Karen had more magic reserves because she was a bishop. Because of her vampire and Uzumaki succubus ancestry, they were particularly big. She found it a little more difficult to use other elemental magics, but her lightning spells were nothing to laugh at. Even though Grayfia preferred to cause wounds rather than heal them, she was found to have a talent for doing so after using one of the few healing spells she was familiar with. Surprisingly, unlike her sister and the other members of Naruto's Peerage, Hanabi had no talent for magic in the hands of the lowly Hyuga. Even the most basic spell turned into a ticking time bomb. She favored physical harm and speed. Instead, the young Hyuga was getting better at fusing the knight's unparalleled speed with the rook's physical strength, but she wouldn't be winning any arm wrestling or marathons anytime soon. Even Rias made remarkable strides, but primarily because she was just honing her craft. Nevertheless, advancement is advancement. While Naruto was being choked by his most loving servant, Grayfia couldn't help but laugh at the sight of her husband's red hair standing on end and his face covered in black soot. She was aware of Naruto's genuine affection for his peers and their love for him. Regretfully, Naruto had little experience with love. Indeed, although he loved the Gremory family and recognized them as his own family, he was raised without a clear understanding of what love was. It was what occasionally made his conversations with his infatuated peers so hilarious, like now, when Karen's enormous breasts were suffocating him and her sister-in-law was about to murder the overly devoted bishop. Naruto told them what Sirzechs had given him after being revived from his wet dream. In capable state, he omitted some of what he told him to spare the girls too much anxiety. Karen was obviously pleased to find out more about the mother and husband of her distant cousin. She was more interested in the two diaries than in the grimoire. Grayfia was pleased to report that they had mastered the fundamentals sufficiently to be able to train independently after a little more training, during which Naruto was observed reading the grimoire in the corner away from the spell-slinging girls before making their way to their own house. Naruto and his peerage bid farewell to Sirzechs, Grayfia, and Rias as they left the Gremory residence. On the way home, Karen had essentially pleaded with him to allow her to read Kushina's diary. After she pressed herself against him and pleaded with him in her most seductive voice, he gave in. Since he handed her the diary, she had been reading it. She wasn't even holding on to Naruto the whole time, which surprised me. Haku and Hinata were at his sides, and she was walking between Yugito and Hanabi at his back. The journey home was rather uneventful. Exhausted from the rigorous training they had undergone, Yugito, Hinata, and Hanabi collapsed onto the big couch in the living room as soon as they entered the house. Despite experiencing mental exhaustion from learning new spells and ways to use their existing skill and spell repertoire, Haku and Karen were still able to stand and perform their daily tasks. Unaware of the difficulties they would encounter in the far future, everyone was happy to eat lunch and dinner and spend the remainder of the exhausting day lounging. 8 years had passed. After 8 arduous years of training, studying, and hard work, Sirzechs Lucifer was standing next to Naruto Uzumaki and his peers. They gazed up at the vast collection of structures. With a smile on his face, Sirzechs extended his arms. "Welcome, Naruto-kun, to Kuoh Academy to ordinary humans. This is a prestigious school turned co-ed only a few years ago. To devils like you and me, it's in the middle of devil territory, split between the Gremory, Sea-Tree, and now, the Uzumaki clans. This is where I, as the principal and chief member of the scholarship committee for the academy as of today, you are transfer students from Tokyo Academy and second-year students. Naruto-kun, you are in Class 2A. It's an advanced studies program for students who are too smart for regular classes. It's the equivalent of being in Class 3B as a second-year student. Haku, Hinata, and Hanabi will be in Class 2B. Yugito and Karen are going to be in Class 3B. Naruto and the girls nodded. Now, traditionally, we have a few clubs that you can start as a way to hide your activities, as devils think of it as a type of headquarters. If you would, what kind of club would you like to start? Naruto touched his chin with his free hand. At 16, the boy's body had undergone a dramatic transformation. At 6 feet tall, he now dominated the girls, and his body was a testament to his rigorous training. If anything, Sirzechs believed that he now resembled his father's clone more so now than in his youth. He had lost the shaggy mop of blonde spikes that had been his hair. It ended in a medium-length ponytail now that it had grown longer. Sirzechs laughed at Naruto's corny smile as the girls rolled their eyes or giggled. I was wondering about making a manga and anime club. He had been an otaku ever since Rias had introduced him to manga and anime. That's great, the older devil remarked, still struggling to contain his laughter. Unfortunately, Naruto hadn't seen Rias in nearly 6 years, since she had long desired to begin her education in the human world while simultaneously looking for her peerage. Naruto and the girls nodded enthusiastically, although Naruto seemed put off by the club's name. I'll just fill out the paperwork and have you enrolled in the Otaku Club. We'll only need a club room to set you up in and you'll be able to start going to classes tomorrow, alright? Naruto said he liked to refer to it as the Anime and Manga Club. Students in the Kuoh Academy uniform were returning to school for the first day of classes the following day. On the way to class, friends talked to each other, and it appeared that the groups were already starting to take shape. Particularly, 3 children appeared to be forming strong bonds with one another. Naturally, the primary subject of their conversation was breasts. Naruto surmised that they were Kuoh Academy's notorious perverted trio. They were caught talking about breasts, openly undressing girls with their eyes, snooping on them in the shower, and even announcing that owning a harem was their ultimate life goal. They probably would have tried to ignore the conversation if it had been someone else. Unfortunately, Naruto was the one who heard them, and he was furious to talk and act as though women were something they could admire and flaunt all day. He felt nauseous. Hinata and Karen were walking next to Naruto while Yugito and Hanabi were walking a little further back. The 3 of them were having a pleasant conversation. Haku was talking about a variety of subjects, such as Hanabi asking Haku to teach her how to cook, and Yugito was just talking about how anxious she was about possibly meeting new people and devils. In an old building a considerable distance from the school, Naruto could have sworn he saw a flash of red pass by a window for a brief moment, but he chose to ignore it in favor of talking about possible devil recruits and the lessons they would be learning throughout the academic year. Hinata did spot someone she believed had promise. Naruto turned to see a dejected girl with dark pink hair and dazzling emerald eyes strolling with her head drooping. Naruto excused himself from his 2 friends, walked over to the girl, and decided to strike up a conversation. While grinning he said, "Hello," and she jumped in surprise and a little frightened. "Sorry about that, I didn't mean to scare you." "No," she said, blushing quite a bit at the sight of such a handsome boy. "I'm sorry, my name's Sakura Haruno, I'm in class 2A. The girl blushed even more as Naruto grinned broadly. The fact that the attractive guy speaking to her would also be in her class seemed to make her blush even more. "My name's Naruto Uzumaki and I'm in class 2A2. Isn't that great?" she said. It meant that he was not only very handsome but also very intelligent. A few girls who were following Sakura and Naruto whispered, "Do you see that? I bet he's just being nice to her." "Yeah," her companion replied. "What kind of person would hang out with a freak like her? I bet she dyes her hair pink to try and draw attention away from her massive forehead." Both Sakura and Naruto could hear the hurtful remarks, and Naruto snarled under his breath. He turned to face his pink-haired friend, who was running off with tears in her eyes, and felt a knot in his chest. Hinata walked up to him and put her hand on his shoulder. She was aware of how painful it was for Naruto to witness such individuals and how easily someone could be destroyed by a snide remark made by someone they didn't even know. "Don't worry, Naruto-kun," she said in a low voice. "You'll get another chance to get to know Sakura-san." Tragically, Naruto sighed. "I know, but people like them just get under my skin. They don't even know Sakura and yet they still find the spite to judge her just because they're jealous of her." The groups dispersed and proceeded to their respective classes. Sakura did see Naruto again, but she made every effort to stay away from him. Lunch eventually arrived swiftly, and Naruto once more saw Sakura eating a bento that was clearly prepared by her mother. While seated alone on a bench, he finally made the decision to voice his opinions as he sat next to her and opened his own bento. He said, "Those girls earlier were wrong about you, Sakura-chan," which made the poor girl erupt. Her eyes were bloodshot from crying this morning as she gazed at him. "Those girls, all they did was pick on you for something they're jealous of." Sakura said, "Like what?" with a slight sniffle. "You see, I don't think the big man upstairs would give you something without a reason. Personally, I think you have a beautiful forehead. It shows just how smart you really are, and your pink hair reminds me of the cherry blossoms that bloom in spring. Memories like that make me really happy, ya know," he said without pause. Although Sakura appeared to laugh, the flush that appeared on her cheeks indicated that she was flattered and thought what he was saying was true. She said, "Thanks a lot, Naruto-san," with her head lowered. "It's just people have been saying that kind of stuff about me since elementary school. It's always gotten to me and I never was comfortable with my appearance. But you're so cool. You don't know me. You had no reason to approach me this morning. You just did. I thought, just for a moment, that someone actually wanted to be my friend." Naruto grinned. She turned to face the other girls who were whispering about them behind their backs. "Of course I wanted to be your friend, Sakura-chan. And I know a lot of other people who would want to be your friend too. Look around you," he said. "Those girls are jealous that I'm talking to you. They would be willing to say anything about you just to make you feel bad or to think I'm just being nice to you for a bad reason. But the truth is that they're jealous I'm hanging out with you. Each and every one of those girls thinks they're attractive because they've been told that all their lives, but I think they're some of the ugliest girls I've ever met." Sakura's emerald eyes began to well up with happy tears. Real beauty is more than just skin deep. It isn't about having big breasts or a voluptuous body. It's about the connection between two people that brings about a bond of friendship, he points out, placing his hand over her heart and her hand over his. "You feel this bond between us? This is what real beauty is to me." Sakura simply threw herself into Naruto's open arms and sobbed silently as she held him close to her. Unable to control herself, her body seemed to fit into his, her C-cup breasts pressing into his chest. He rubbed her back in silence and spoke into her ear in a few unintelligible words. A couple of minutes later, the two parted ways. There was a good reason why Sakura's eyes were even more bloodshot. Sakura appeared to be pondering something when she said, "If you ever need to talk or want to hang out with me and my friends, come to the new anime and manga club. I promise that my friends would love to meet you." "You mean the Otaku Club, right?" she graciously inquired. A storm cloud appeared over Naruto's head, as if his head had fallen. "I told that bastard to call it the Anime and Manga Club," he said. "Calling it the Otaku Club makes it sound like a club of weird kids freaking out over anime porn." "Not all otaku are like that, Naruto-kun," Sakura said in a deadpan tone. "I know that, but when people hear the word otaku, they think of people like the perverted trio, who obsess over anime porn and glorify slutty girls with big breasts. That's not what my club is about," he yelled to himself as he pumped the atmosphere. "My club is for people who dream of piloting Gundams, launching ki blasts from their palms, and fighting the forces of evil with magic." "Sadly, you're the only otaku member of the club," Hinata said, bowing to Sakura. As Sakura's gaze swept over Hinata, she blushed like a tomato and turned away. "It's so good to meet you, Sakura-chan. I'm one of Naruto-kun's friends, Hinata Hyuga." Hinata had an hourglass figure and D-cup breasts, making her a very attractive woman. Sakura remarked, "It's nice to meet you too, Hinata-san," but Hinata dismissed the formality. The woman said politely, "Please call me Hinata-chan, Sakura-chan." She turned to face Naruto, and although her smile seemed to wane a bit, it still had a friendly vibe. "Naruto-kun has a good eye when it comes to making new friends. I hope to see you around our little clubhouse one day." "Naruto-kun, it appears as though you are needed at the club. Karen-chan appears to have accidentally replaced your Psychic Academy mangas with something called Icha Icha Paradise." Naruto let out a sigh. Sakura looked shocked at Naruto's casual dismissal of the Icha Icha series, while Hinata shook her head and said, "Can't you just burn the Icha Icha books? Those are the kinds of books that make people think our club is full of pervs." "I'm sorry, Naruto-kun, but it is technically a manga light novel series, and Principal Sirzechs said that if we destroy them, then he'll cut funding for the club completely." Naruto let out a sigh. "He's forcing me to keep it in the club library just because I won't read it." He turned to face Sakura and saw her eyes gleam. "I'm sorry, Sakura-chan, but this is something that needs my immediate attention. I would still love for you to come by after class, if only to get a look at how the club runs and to meet some new friends." Sakura gave an excited nod. "Of course," she replied right away. "I mean, I'd love to visit your club, Naruto-kun, but I think we should get to class before the teacher marks us tardy." Naruto laughed and nodded. Sakura nodded, gave Naruto a final hug, and thanked him for being her friend before rushing off to their next period class. "Of course, go on ahead. I'll meet you in the classroom in a minute." Naruto's eyes hardened slightly after Sakura left. "So what was the real emergency, Hinata-chan?" Hinata gave a nod. "Apparently, there have been multiple sightings of fallen angels in the area. Something powerful has to be attracting them here." Naruto gave a nod after giving it some thought. He said, "I see. There haven't been any attacks on humans or devils, so there's no reason to get involved yet. However, I do want you to keep an eye on their movements. It's difficult to imagine fallen angels congregating in the territory of 3 known high-class devil clans without a purpose. Also, I'd like Haku to keep an eye out on Sakura-chan. Before you showed up, when she was hugging me, I could feel something strong. It may be nothing, but I have a feeling that it's a sacred gear, maybe even 2. Hinata's gaze expanded. The biblical God is said to have given sacred gears to certain people who he thought were deserving of them, although it wasn't common by any means. Having one sacred gear wasn't unheard of. Sakura would undoubtedly grow stronger in the end, though, if Naruto's suspicions were correct and she possessed 2 sacred gears. "So you want her for your peerage?" Naruto gave a headshake. "If I were like other devils, I wouldn't hesitate to add her to my peerage, but I don't want to pressure her into it. I want it to be her choice." Hinata nodded with a loving smile because Naruto was so considerate of other people's feelings. He wouldn't make things happen unless he had no other option. "Do you know what piece you want to give her?" Naruto gave a nod but remained silent, though he knew he wouldn't elaborate. Hinata pouted. "I'll go back to class and tell Haku to watch over Sakura-chan. Take care in class." With a nod, Naruto bolted for the classroom. The tardy bell had not yet rung when he got there, and the teacher had only instructed him to open the chemistry books to page 114. Sakura and Naruto were already making their way across the courtyard to the clubhouse by the time school let out. A bright light streamed through the doorway as Naruto opened it, and he was beaming like a crazy person. "Welcome, Sakura-chan, to the Anime and Manga Club." Sakura could see the club room's exquisite furnishings once the light faded. The room was filled with 12 couches, chairs, and love seats. The wall that extended all the way to the roof was lined with bookshelves, each one crammed with various manga from around the globe. Manga from America, manga from Japan, manga in Chinese, an endless supply of graphic novels. An incredibly beautiful woman with long crimson hair and ruby red eyes was sitting by herself in a love seat, reading Icha Icha. Schoolyard days. With great concentration she wore a short plaid skirt that accentuated her well-toned legs, a very revealing black blouse that flaunted her DD cup bust, and a pair of midnight black stiletto heels. A young girl wearing the typical Kuoh Academy uniform and with B-cup breasts was sitting alone in one of the chairs. She bore a striking resemblance to Hinata Hyuga. She drooled a little as her long, luscious legs and attractive rear were flaunted by her black skirt. Hinata was sitting alone on a three-person couch in the far corner, watching Dragon Ball Z. A stunning woman who appeared to be a supermodel was seated close to Hinata like Naruto. She wore her long blonde hair in a ponytail. She wore form-fitting jeans that made her legs toned but luscious, and a purple shirt that highlighted her D-cup breasts. Sakura genuinely thought she had passed away and entered heaven. For a moment all of the people in the room turned to smile at them as soon as the doors creaked open when Gohan is kidnapped by his evil uncle in the middle of the episode. Hinata paused the DVD and approached the two. The room was illuminated by Hinata's smile. The young woman said, "Hello, Sakura-chan," with kindness. "I'm so happy to see you here. Allow me to introduce you to the current members of the Otaku Club." Naruto exclaimed, "Anime and Manga Club," as he approached one of the walls, took out the first Rosario plus Vampire manga book, and started reading it quietly. "You already know myself and Naruto-kun. Our president sitting on the couch reading the Icha Icha book is Karen Uzumaki," Karen said, grinning as she noticed Sakura's response to the book's title. "Don't let her last name fool you. Though she and Naruto-kun are distant second cousins, she's also quite possibly the biggest pervert in the club." The cheap shot of labeling her a pervert made Karen snort. She had some succubus traits. She had a healthy sex drive, which was not her fault. "Well, healthy for a nympho. The brunette of our group is in the kitchen, preparing some snacks for the group. Her name is Haku Shitori. She's a serious masochist and often acts like Naruto's servant in private, but she's a normal girl in public." Sakura gave a nod. "Next up is the blonde girl, Yugito Ni. She's a bit of a supernatural buff. Sometimes she'll play the shamisen for us to provide a bit of an atmosphere." Yugito gave the pink kid a kind smile before going back to her book about ancient Japanese mythological animals and demons. The other girls merely giggled as Hanabi cried out indignantly, "Last, but not least, is my twin sister, Hanabi. She's our local Tsunere lolicon, if you had to give her a special title." "Just because I don't have massive boobs like you doesn't make me a lolicon," she said. "Then that gothic Lolita dress you have in the closet at home belongs to one of your friends, Hanabi-chan?" After flushing and puffing out her cheeks, Hanabi approached Naruto and put her arms around his waist. "Naruto bucko, Hinane-chan and the others are being mean to me and making fun of my small boobs." Naruto dismissed her while continuing to read his book. "Hinata-chan, don't poke fun at Hanabi-chan. Hanabi-chan, there's nothing wrong with your boobs. They're fine the way they are." While Hinata and the others simply giggled happily, Hanabi flushed and began to splutter gibberish. Sakura pressed her hands into her B-cup breasts and blurted out, "I agree with Naruto-kun, Hanabi-chan." Blushing herself. "Big boobs may be nice to look at, they can be a massive pain in the back sometimes." With a sly smile, Karen approached Sakura and raised the pink-haired girl's hands to her enormous breasts. "So you like to look at other girls' breasts, Sakura-chan? Does that mean you play for the other team?" Before giving Karen a gentle breast massage, Sakura said, "Actually, without fear of retaliation, I enjoy both sides of the fence. Boys have their pros and cons, just like girls do. For a girl like me, I like boys for family, but girls are for fun." Sakura's magic hands performed a miracle on Karen's breasts, sending a shiver up her spine. She groaned in mild ecstasy as she turned to face Naruto, then shot him a stern look. She pleaded with him, "Please tell me she's joining the club. Please, I love this girl. Can we keep her?" Naruto laughed at his cousin's response, but he was shocked that Sakura had come out as bisexual and somewhat of a pervert so soon after joining the group. But that appeared to be a positive thing. It implied that she trusted them with such a secret. "Sorry, Karen-chan, it's up to her. I'm not going to force her to join simply so you can have a friend to play house with." Naruto turned to Sakura. "Sakura-chan, you are more than welcome to come here after school cuts out. You don't have to join the club immediately. Give it some thought and get to know the members first before giving me a straight answer, okay?" Sakura gave him a big hug after nodding and running over to him. I'm so glad you talked to me today and I'm so happy having friends like you in your club. I'll see you all around school later. My mom's gonna freak out if I'm not home in half an hour. Naruto nodded and the girls each said their farewells to the young girl before she took off with her backpack slung over her right shoulder. He was approached by Hinata and Karen. Although Karen put her arms around Naruto's right arm. Naruto-kun, did you find it in her backpack? Hinata inquired. Naruto gave a nod. The flyer is in her backpack, placed as a bookmark in her math book. It was easy enough now. We have a way of keeping an eye on her in addition to Hiku-chan. Now all we have to do is wait. 1 month had passed since the start of classes at Kuoh Academy, and 3 students were lying on the hill a short distance from the school. Chatting, they were talking about something, but what they were talking about. One of the boys sighed. I have to admit, boobs are the greatest thing ever. He had hazel eyes and light brown hair. His bald friend closed his eyes and clenched his fist. You and me are on the same page, my man, he said, sounding almost indifferent. The other black-haired friend said, me too, adjusting his glasses, but it's pointless. The brown-haired little boy sat up and peered across the courtyard. Matsuda, Motohama, can you explain to me why we enrolled in this school again? Like you don't know, the bald Matsuda retorted. Up until a few years ago, this school was nothing but chicks. The boy with the glasses, Motohama, asserted, we had to take advantage of this male-to-female ratio. Also, the foreign exchange students here are ridiculous. Matsuda exclaimed, Poon, as far as the eye can see, we figured hoes would be lining up to get on our jocks and we wouldn't have to do a damn thing, as he was overcome with visions of the stunning schoolgirls. We'd be drowning in that stank. Our very own harem, exclaimed the boy with the brown hair, who appeared to have won the lottery as he clenched his fists. Matsuda yelled, hell yeah. We were going to have casual unprotected sex with hot chicks and then never call them again, while striking his own pose. That was the plan anyway. Here we are up against the spring semester of our second year, and between the 3 of us, we don't even have one girlfriend. Motohama muttered, what's the point? It'll never happen. No, we can't give up now, it's not too late for us. A young boy who was slightly younger than them was passing by while they were conversing. He had deep azure eyes and golden blonde hair. His appearance seemed childlike to the 3 of them. He was dressed in the uniform that was expected of boys at the Kuoh Academy. 3 girls started jogging up to him as he passed the trio. The middle girl, a brunette with soft brown eyes, called out to him, Naruto, wait up, while her 2 friends, a brunette with dark brown eyes and a lighter tint to her hair and a raven-haired girl with purple-blue eyes, came up to him together. What are you doing right now? Yeah, the girl with the raven hair said, you maybe want to go sing karaoke with us? Naruto closed his eyes and grinned warmly. Sorry, ladies, he said earnestly. My club's having a meeting soon and I really have to go. Maybe some other time? The girls, while a tad disappointed, squealed in delight as hope still existed for the chance to hang out with one of Kuoh Academy's gentlemen, before running off to class. As he walked away, Motohama repositioned his glasses and glanced up at the young blonde. Simply, Naruto Uzumaki, he said, Class 2A, an advanced class for super geniuses. He's only 15 years old, but practically every girl in school wants to sex him up. He's the president of the Otaku Club. And every guy wants to mess him up, Matsuda yelled, clenching his fist. That tool, exclaimed the boy with the brown hair. I don't get it, just because he's hot, sexy, really smart and the coolest guy in school in spite of being an otaku, they all want to rub up on Naruto. He sucks so much less than we do, Motohama exclaimed, his eyes welling with tears. The brunette remarked, life really does blow sometimes, as a tiny cloud of melancholy passed over his head. Oh shit, I'm gonna be late, Matsuda yelled to his friends after checking his watch. Gonna be late for what? His 2 friends asked inquisitively. All that was required was a thumbs up and a perverted glance. A few seconds later Matsuda exclaimed, Murayama's jugs are freaking huge, with excitement. Motohama recited, 33, 28, 30 seconds, with twisted delight. Calling Matsuda once more, and Katesa's legs are crazy sexy. 31, 26, 31sts, Motohama squealed, his voice taking on a new, twisted pitch. I found this yesterday, Matsuda remarked. I call it the tit hole. Motohama proudly remarked, good job, Matsuda, as they kept peeking through the small hole, their butts rubbing against each other. The young man with the brown hair called out, guys, and then he pushed Matsuda out of the peephole. No fair, it's my turn. The brunette's grunts could be heard from inside the changing room as the 2 carried on their conversation. The brunette with the hard brown eyes, Murayama, hastily covered herself. What was that? She cried out. The entire Kendo squad confronted Motohama and Matsuda with their shinai in a menacing manner after they realized the jig was up and hauled ass, knocking their brown-haired friend to the ground. Well, Murayama said, staring down at the pervert in front of her with seemingly uncaring eyes, what a surprise. No wait, the boy attempted to plead, don't hurt me. Katase yelled, Issei, you perv. As the group continued to beat him senselessly, Issei looked up to see Naruto Uzumaki standing behind the girls, grinning as if he hadn't just witnessed a pervert being beaten. After a few moments the sound of shinai striking barely protected flesh ceased. He softly said, excuse me, ladies, briefly grabbing the girls' attention. If Katase and Murayama's haste to join him was any indication, they appeared to recognize him. I was wondering if any of you had seen Hanabi-chan lately. You see, we had a club meeting and she didn't show up, so I got worried she was running late or something. Since I know you both are good friends of hers, I was wondering if you'd seen her lately. Katase let out a longing sigh. You're such a good person. Naruto-kun, Hanabi got called to the principal's office just a few minutes ago. You just missed her. Naruto let out a weary sigh and then woke up once more. Well, if you wouldn't mind helping me out, could I ask one of you to escort me back to the club? You see, some of the girls around here have been becoming more aggressive as of late, but if you're busy doing something right now, I can understand. After giving Issei a final shinai smack, Murayama nodded. We'd be happy to protect you until you reach the anime and manga club, Naruto-senpai. Naruto dismissed the formality with a wave. Please, Murayama-chan, call me Naruto or Naruto-kun. We're in the same grade, after all, and I was never one for formalities between friends. A stunned silence appeared to descend upon Konami and Murayama. Konami was called first. You really consider us your friends, Naruto-kun, she said. Naruto gave a nod. This bond that connects our hearts to one another starts out frail and easily broken, but as we spend time getting to know one another, that bond grows stronger with each passing moment. Even though we don't know a lot about one another and we rarely meet up, we formed a bond between us in that short amount of time. Naruto scratched his head fearfully, not realizing that Issei and the entire Kendo club were staring at him in wonder. At least, that's what I'd like to believe. As they slowly raised a hand to their hearts, Konami and Murayama could feel a flush rising on their cheeks. I think you're right, Naruto-kun, called Murayama softly. Konami nodded. The girl with the pink hair laughed and said, me too. You can be incredibly wise when you want to be. Naruto-kun, you have a gift when it comes to speaking to others. Naruto gave a clumsy laugh. I appreciate your honesty now. Would you like to join me on the trip to my club? The girls gave him a fierce nod, then put their arms around him and headed in the direction of the anime and manga club, the otaku club, intent on avoiding his fangirls. A short while later, Issei was discussing with his friends what had happened to Motohama and Matsuda just moments before, but not before yelling at them about how he had been beaten and that he had not had the opportunity to see nude, flesh and blood breasts for himself. Even Motohama and Matsuda appeared shocked that Naruto might have saved Issei from suffering even more at the hands of those violent women just by showing up. Around that time, Issei noticed a stunning girl with large, abundant breasts and long, flowing red hair staring out of a clubroom window. When he tried to confirm that she wasn't a figment of his imagination, she vanished. Who was that girl? Issei inquired with his companions. When they looked up, they saw what Issei had seen. I'm not surprised you don't know, Motohama remarked. Her name is Rias Gremory. She's one of the foreign exchange students from Europe. 39, 23 35ths. She's one of the most beautiful girls in school. But don't get your hopes up, a girl like her would never talk to a guy like you, no offense. Issei muttered absently, none taken, as though he hadn't heard his friend taunt him. He was certain that the four-eyed wonder was telling the truth under normal circumstances. A girl like that, a perfect 10A, would never, ever talk to a 3 like him. Club for Occult Research. A young lady with red hair that appeared to be dripping from the top of her head. She was dressed in the typical Kuoh Academy uniform for women, but her enormous bust appeared to be about to protrude from the blouse. A chessboard with black and white pieces strewn about haphazardly was what she was staring down at, but some of the pieces were glowing red. Akeno, said Rias. Who was that boy? The one in the middle of the group down there? Similar in beauty to Rias, Akeno Hamejima had deep purple eyes and long black hair that appeared to be woven from silk. Her face was adorned with a reflective expression as she attempted to remember the details. Akeno said, I think his name is Issei Hyodo. He's from class 2B. He's also a shameless pervert. But she giggled at the last part. Why? Are you interested in him? After scowling, Rias moved a piece down the board. Akeno pouted as she looked down, trying to think of more moves to make but finding none. Checkmate. Rias abruptly moved to a glass door, started undressing, entered, and began taking a shower. It was a good try, but your trap was a little bit too obvious. Anyway, I'm not interested in him like that. Akeno, I'm already taken, it's just that I felt something about him. Do you want me to ask Kaneko-chan to observe him then, President? Akeno asked. Rias stated, yes, I'm curious about him, in a decisive tone. After nodding, Akeno turned to get Rias a fresh change of clothes, but he stopped in the middle of his stride. When are we finally going to meet Naruto-kun and his peerage, President? Soon enough, though there is one thing I'm worried about when we do meet. As Rias came out of the shower, Akeno picked up the clothes. What's that? Naruto's power, said Rias plainly. I wonder how Kaneko will take it when she finds out. Akeno grimaced. She recalled their initial encounter with Kaneko. Kuroka, her sister, had developed extraordinary strength and was essentially a senjutsu and yujutsu master. According to some, she was even more powerful than her master, a formidable devil in his own right. After killing her master one day, Kuroka was classified as an SS-class stray devil. They were going to put her to death because they thought Kaneko would follow suit, but Rias made her rook and accepted responsibility for the outcome. Since then, Kaneko has avoided expressing herself publicly because she was terrified of hurting people close to her by using senjutsu. To learn that someone might have been able to stop that incident from occurring, it would create a huge wall between them and obliterate any trust she might have had in Naruto. I see what you mean, Akeno remarked sorrowfully. As she completed the finishing touches, Rias nodded. Akeno looked at Rias, not understanding what she was talking about, and said, for now, I'm just happy knowing Naruto's been doing well and that his peerage is steadily growing. That Sakura Haruno girl, I can tell already he wants to make her a member of his peerage, but there is something keeping him from doing so. Akeno nodded and glanced out the window, where she saw Naruto heading to his next class while a very needy redhead was clinging to his arm. President? Does Naruto know any other girls with red hair other than yourself? Rias grinned. Well, I think she's hanging on to him on their way to class right now. At the window, Rias glanced down at Naruto and the girl hanging over him. Almost in a flash of crimson her eyes started to twitch, and her hands soon covered in a black and red aura. Karen, she became snarly. I can't believe she would still be all over him in a public area, no less. Does she not care about his reputation in school? A faint black spark ignited from Karen's hand, and for a split second, Rias and Akeno thought they saw her smirking at them. That bitch even has the gall to taunt us, bellowed Rias. President, said Akeno, you're about to destroy the window with your power. Though she didn't control her temper, Rias took notice and started to manage the power until it disappeared from view. If it were her last act, she would exact revenge on that woman. In the interim classes were finally over and Issei Hyodo was standing on the bridge alone. The sun was beginning to set and the sky turned a brilliant shade of orange-yellow. Excuse me, called a female voice from across the bridge. Issei's heart started to sink into his stomach as he turned to look. Probably one of the most attractive girls he had ever seen was this one. She looked exotic to him because of her long black hair and calming violet eyes. She was wearing a uniform from a school he had never heard of, which was strange. I'm sorry, but are you Issei Hyodo? Issei reluctantly nodded. Never in his pitiful life had a bombshell of a girl approached him, but now he was actually speaking to one. I was wondering, that is, if you don't have any plans. Issei's world seemed to light up when she blushed. Would you please go out with me? Issei was in a warning. Hot chick asked me out, coma. If he was shocked that a pretty girl was speaking to him, unfortunately, nothing seemed strange to him. OMG, one person can be so dumb. So, when a smoking hot, absolutely going to kill him painfully, chick asked him out, he did what any other person would do. With a stupid nod, he replied, sure, I'd love to. The girl giggled, which made it harder for him to resist her. He nodded foolishly as she kissed him on the cheek and waved off. Thanks, you don't know how much this means to me. I'll see you later, okay? She said. He didn't see a pink-haired girl being asked out by a blonde-haired girl wearing the same uniform as him as he was hopping, skipping, and jumping with excitement on his way home. The girl with blonde hair and sparkling blue eyes said, so, Sakura-chan, as a deep red flush spread across her face. I enjoyed our date tonight. I especially loved this purple scrunchie you bought me. When her girlfriend, Ino Yamanaka from Tokyo Academy, complimented her on their amazing date earlier, Sakura Haruno flushed. Sakura said humbly, I didn't do everything, Ino-chan. You should really meet Naruto, my friend. He gave me those reservations for that restaurant and the tickets for the movie. Ino grinned broadly. This Naruto guy sounds like a really cool person. I wouldn't mind meeting him, if you wouldn't mind introducing us. We can even do it tomorrow before we go out on another date. Sakura gave an excited nod. I want Naruto to meet my girlfriend. Sakura blushed profusely, effortlessly matching her hair color. I know he'd love to meet you. I'll see if you can come over tomorrow afternoon to hang out in the club room. I still can't believe this is happening to me. I actually have a girlfriend and a lot of good friends, and it's only been a month since school started. It seems so surreal. Walking over to Sakura, Ino put her arms around the small girl's waist and pressed her bust against Sakura's growing bust. She whispered, "How's this for surreal, Sakura-chan?" and then gave the pinkhead a gentle peck on the lips. The peck became a fairly intense makeout session with no resistance. After nearly 15 minutes, the two parted ways, and Ino declared she needed to return home before her parents became concerned. After giving a nod, Sakura started dancing her way to her tiny apartment, where she lived alone. She only hoped that tomorrow would be even better, but as she slept, fantasies of better times ahead of her flooded her thoughts. Now that it was the morning after, Issei did something that left his two friends speechless. He introduced them to Yuma Amano and declared her to be his girlfriend. He and Yuma left to spend the day together before heading to class after some remarks about how he could get a girlfriend like Yuma by not jerking off so much. Yuma and Issei were having lunch together at about noon when Sakura and Ino, two other girls, ran in the direction of the otaku club. When they knocked, the door opened and Haku, dressed as a traditional French maid, greeted them with a smile. "Hello, Sakura-chan," she said, grinning warmly. "What can I do for you?" Sakura would be surprised to learn that Ino was stunned in silence for a different reason. "Is Naruto in? I wanted to invite Ino-chan, my girlfriend, to him and thank him for what he did for us last night." Haku gave a nod. Haku turned around and headed for Naruto's room, saying, "Of course, let me fetch Master for you both. He'll be here shortly." Ino gave Sakura a strange look and raised an eyebrow. In response to the strange behavior, Sakura merely laughed and asked, "Master?" Sakura said, as if it were a daily occurrence, "Well, Haku's a bit of a masochist and often refers to Naruto as Master, or sometimes me Lord. Though that last one is rare, and I've only ever heard her call him that once since I've known the club members. There's also a sadomasochist, Karen, who calls him Master, but she's usually trying to have sex with him." Ino, however, felt differently about why two of the club members called him Master. She was still fighting the urge to flee from the enormous amount of energy contained in the space. "It's unbelievable," Ino yelled to herself in her mind. "Devils are friends with Sakura-chan? Are mortal enemies?" Ino had to make a difficult decision: either excuse herself from Sakura's presence and leave to inform her superiors, or stay here and hope that the devils who resided here didn't find out she was a fallen angel, her girlfriend, and someone she cared for, her survival girlfriend living. She hoped that later on, she wouldn't regret following her heart. Haku quickly descended again, trailed by a small boy with deep blue eyes and short, spiky blonde hair. He was dressed in black dress shoes and the traditional Kuoh Academy uniform. His body didn't react to Ino's presence for a single second after he saw her. Sakura hurried through the door, gave Naruto a warm embrace, kissed his cheek, and thanked him for all of his help before pulling him over to Ino, who was perspiring nervously. She said, "Naruto-kun, with kindness. This is Ino-chan. My girlfriend Ino-chan. This is Naruto-kun, the president of this club and the person who gave me the confidence to go out with you last night." Ino reluctantly accepted Naruto's extended hand. "So you're the young woman who my dear friend is so easily flustered simply by mentioning and passing. It's a pleasure to meet you finally. I've been asking Sakura to bring you over before your big date, but alas, she thought I would try to steal you from her." Both Sakura and Ino flushed, but only Sakura gave Naruto a playful arm bump. "I did not. I just didn't want you and the rest of the club to scare her off." After giving a small laugh, Naruto turned to face the clock that hung above the mantel. "Sakura-chan, I believe you're about to be late to your 5th period science class. Better hurry. Don't want you to get detention, now do we?" Sakura left Ino and Naruto alone as she hurried out of the room after bowing her head to him. "Well, I've got classes to attend to at Tokyo Academy, so I'll just..." Naruto said, "Please, Ino-chan." Softly, "I know you're a fallen angel and I know you know I'm a devil, but there's no need for us to be enemies." Ino's eyes instantly became cold, but Naruto mockingly raised his hands to indicate his surrender. "What do you want, devil?" he said, truthfully, and Ino nodded. "I want Sakura to be happy." "You're lying," snarled Ino. Naruto gave a headshake. He said, "Look into my eyes, Ino." Ino complied. Throughout her entire life, Ino was unable to accept that the devil in front of her was speaking the truth. "All I really care for is that my friends and loved ones are truly happy. Devils," she was always taught, were liars and deceivers. For a moment, she seemed to have been totally disarmed. "I value Sakura's happiness, as well as the happiness of all of the members of my peerage, above my own." When we first met, Sakura was so sad. People who never got to know her taunted her and bullied her emotionally. It was sickening. It took a while, but the two of us became friends and I invited her to my club to meet the members of my peerage very quickly. She became friends with all of the girls here. They care for her happiness and safety just as much, if not more so, than I do. Ino appeared stunned. Why are you telling me all this? Naruto gave a dry laugh. Maybe it's because I trust you, maybe it's because I can see the lengths you would be willing to go through to keep her safe. It doesn't matter. What does matter is that you and Sakura-chan are dating, that she likes you, maybe even loves you, and I can't bear the thought of ripping that away from her just because fallen angels and devils have never gotten along. So you're just going to let me keep dating Sakura even though I'm a fallen angel? She questioned with suspicion. Truth be told, yeah, Sakura's a nice girl who puts everything she has into something she's interested in. I'm sure you've noticed as you were practically playing tonsil hockey last night, he replied with an earnest smirk at the accusation. Ino had the grace to blush. As long as you keep her safe and happy, we'll never have bad blood between us, okay? Ino gave a nod. Her words were, thanks, Naruto-san. You know, this is my first time meeting a devil. I mean, you're really different than what I was trained to expect from your kind. And I can't say I've ever had the pleasure of meeting such a beautiful fallen angel. When I was told they look like ugly crows growing up, I'm glad to say that neither of our preconceptions of the other are no longer valid. Ino's blush grew deeper than she thought possible. Before laughing with Naruto and Haku, Ino jokingly asked, are you sure you're not trying to steal me from Sakura-chan, because it might be working? Take care of Sakura-chan for us, will you? And if she ever decides on joining the club, you have exclusive following rights to join as well. The Uzumaki name may not hold as much clout as it used to, but it would be enough to protect you should you need it. Ino bowed politely. Thank you, I'm happy Sakura-chan introduced us and I'm happier to call you friend, Naruto-kun. With a nod, Naruto dismissed the formality. Before you leave, if something should ever happen to Sakura, I placed one of my flyers in her backpack without her notice. Do not hesitate to use it when or if something happens. Ino nodded before sprinting back to Tokyo Academy to start her first set of classes at third period. As soon as class ended, Sakura and Ino met one another at the bridge and spent the entire day hanging out all over town. They went to the movies, lingerie shops, and the arcade. They went wherever they wanted to go and had a great time. Sakura insisted on walking Ino home as the sun was setting, primarily because her apartment was close by. They were walking past the fountain in the center of town when they noticed a woman with long black hair, purple eyes, jet black wings, and a very skimpy black leather outfit thrust a spear made of energy straight into the stomach of a young boy Sakura instantly recognized. She cried out, "Issei," and then dashed in the direction of the fallen boy. The woman with raven hair said, "So I see you finally brought your target, Yamanaka," without expressing any regret. "Kill her and we can go home. I'm tired of this disgusting place." When Ino saw Sakura attempting to save the boy's life but realizing it was in vain, she yelled, "What the hell did you do, Rainier?" Her eyes wide with panic. "I wasn't told anything about killing." Sakura must have been too preoccupied with attempting to save Issei's life to comprehend the conversation, or she may not have been listening. Rainier narrowed his eyes at the girl before he realized what had happened. "You fell in love with that pathetic girl, Yamanaka? How sickening can you get? If you ever want to see your mother alive, you'll kill her now." Ino yelled, "No," and then revealed two silver-gray wings. Her school uniform was ripped to pieces and replaced with a purple leather strip that pulled her breasts tightly against her chest to keep them from bouncing too much and covered her nipples. In the end, her skirt turned into a matching purple thong, which she wore with black fishnet stockings and mid-calf purple stiletto heels. Her fallen angel mentor easily avoided the lavender spear of energy that materialized in her hand before she threw it at him. "Sakura-chan means the world to me. I'm not about to let that get taken away by you, Rainier." Rainier observed with curiosity as Ino conjured up several dozen energy spears and then mentally launched them at her, one after the other with varying numbers, angles, and speeds. Each spear cut through the sky in the direction of its target. A fine sheet of sweat was streaming down Ino's face by the time she had manually tossed her 15th spear. Unfortunately, Rainier had easily avoided every spear that came at him. Rainier gave a snort. She mocked the blonde, not realizing that he was grinning, saying, "So pathetic. 15 is your limit? When I was your age, I could do 50. Ino muttered, "Crush," and then balled her open hand into a fist unexpectedly. 15 spears that had somehow encircled her in a huge bubble nearly skewered Rainier, but two spears that Rainier spun around and slashed at the approaching spears with expert precision deflected and destroyed them. But she didn't get one. She was stabbed in the right shoulder by that one. Her pain flared again, and she let go of one of her spears, sending it flying into fine dust. Rainier made a much bigger spear and hurled it straight at Sakura. Seemingly finally losing her temper, Ino was too exhausted and depleted to try to lunge at it, intercept it, or even shield Sakura from it with her body like Issei's wound, but much bigger. The spear now protruded from Sakura's stomach. Unaware that Rainier was retreating quickly, Ino crawled to her friend. Keeping in mind the last thing Naruto had said to her, Ino searched Sakura Haruno's backpack and discovered the flyer the blonde devil had brought up. She wished and crossed her fingers in less than 30 seconds. A red circle of light emanated from all around them, and Naruto Uzumaki was standing in the center of it, radiating warmth and power that gave the fallen angel hope. She was certain that Naruto heard her wish. Naruto, Ino said, her eyes welling with tears. Naruto nodded sympathetically and turned to face his dying friend. I'm sorry I tried to save her, but I wasn't strong enough. I know I said I'd allow you to make the choice to join my club, Sakura-chan, he said with solemnity. Naruto reached into his pockets and produced a red rook, saying, unfortunately, that decision has already been made for you. The rook then sank and blended into Sakura's body, saying, rise, Sakura Haruno. From this point forward, you are going to be my servant until I release you from this contract. As though she had never been fatally wounded, her wound healed itself. Sakura appeared to reach the mid-cup range with her B-cup bust in order to accommodate the increased strength, endurance, and power that came with becoming a devil. Her body seemed to stretch itself and grow taller. With tears of happiness streaming down her cheeks, Ino watched and put her arms around Sakura's unconscious body. Thank you, Ino muttered to the person who saved her girlfriend. Naruto gave a nod. Take her to her apartment, Ino. I'm sure you know where it is by now. When she wakes up, tell her to meet us at the club immediately tomorrow morning. I'll have the principal excuse her from all classes today due to sudden illness. If she asks about tonight, tell her that we'll discuss it tomorrow when she gets to the club, okay? With a nod, Ino took off into the night sky knowing who was coming to save Issei. Naruto waited until a red circle appeared behind him before turning around. Gremory quickly arrived on the scene and used all 8 of her pawns to revive Issei, though 4 of them were strangely glowing. Naruto said, hello, Rias-chan, startling the girl and making her turn to look into her best friend's face. It's been a while since we last spoke. Although it was invisible in the darkness, Rias's face flushed a vivid crimson. Too long, Naruto-kun. Unaware that her now fully grown breasts were making Naruto blush like a child kissing for the first time, Rias hurried him and gave him a hug. Stepping away from Naruto, Rias could easily see just how much he'd grown since she last saw him. He stood at around 5 feet 11 inches tall and lost a good portion of his baby fat, giving him an incredibly lean body frame without having to give his best friend a close inspection. Naruto was already aware of what made her unique. Rias's transformation from a flat-chested girl with slightly plump cheeks to a supermodel with a bust that matched or even rivaled Karen's was evident. Naruto said, so, Rias-chan, in an attempt to break the awkward silence that between them, how have your studies been going these past 6 years? Rias gave a nod. Pretty well. I've already got a few people to join my peerage, though I will admit that I don't have nearly as many as you do. Naruto-kun, I've only got 4 active with one that had to be sealed away because his power was so dangerous to him and those around him. Naruto gave a nod. He was aware of the crucial events that resulted in her bishop being sealed, and although he didn't like it, he acknowledged that it was necessary. I'm glad to hear you made friends aside from me and my peerage. Rias-chan, Karen often suggested that you had mysteriously died trying to revive a single demon for your peerage. Isn't that silly of her? Rias's eye twitched with suppressed rage. I guess Karen thought she was that pitiful she would soon have her wagon permanently fixed for the time being. She pretended to laugh, a sound that was strangely malevolent and tinged with psychotic delight. How silly indeed. I can't wait to show everyone how much stronger I've gotten with the help of my peerage. Naruto seemed to have an epiphany and abruptly snapped his fingers. That's a good idea. Rias-chan, you can bring your peerage over to my clubhouse and we'll have a meet and greet. Rias gave a collective clap. That's a wonderful idea. That way, we can get to know one another just in case we end up needing the other group's help on a contract. After giving a nod, Naruto took out his phone. Let's exchange numbers in case you need some help. It would be easier to call me than it would be to summon me via a contract, right? After exchanging phone numbers and Rias nodding, the two decided to return to their tasks. I'll go ahead and take this lump back to his house before heading home myself. Before she left to continue her studies among humans and gather members for her peerage, he used to give her a gentle kiss on the forehead. And I am pretty tired after everything today. Good night, Rias-chan, he said before blushing. Rias used a summoning circle to take Issei home, and then another to return her to the Occult Research Club. To enjoy the pleasant evening minus the once blood-soaked fountain area, Naruto just started to walk back to the clubhouse across the street. A light wind blew. He returned to the clubhouse without any problems, though it took about half an hour. Almost instantly, Naruto sensed something was wrong. As he opened the doors, he extended his senses, entered the room, and shut the door. He noticed someone sitting in his favorite chair as he entered the large building's club room, but they were too small for him to see. But the smoke from the chair made him think of someone he knew. Ah, An elderly voice said. The figure leapt from the chair and headed toward the viewing area, saying, "I'm glad to see you here at last, Naruto. Though I wish it were under better circumstances." Behind him, an elderly, four-tailed monkey was sculling. He had a pipe clenched tightly in his lips and was about the height of a small child. Naruto bowed his head to the elder and said, "Son Goku-sama," but both of them could see how irritated he was with the elder smoking in his club room. "What are you doing here? What's wrong?" "The tree of Biju," Naruto said, his eye twitching. "All of the current demon lords are said to have descended from the tree of Biju. Someone has taken the Jubi tree." According to legend, the tree itself was very powerful and served as a link between the 9 demon lords. It was believed to be impossible to take the tree because it was said to have taken roots hundreds of miles beneath the underworld, but learning that the tree is no longer there portends trouble. Naruto questioned, "Do you have any idea who could have taken it?" The elder monkey shook his head. "No. But the demon lords are going to be gathering in a secret location to discuss this matter in depth." Naruto hesitated for a second. "If Kurama, the 9-tailed demon lord, is locked away in my stomach, then who will take his place during the meeting?" "That would be me," a soft female voice from the stairs said. The woman had gentle golden eyes and long blonde hair. She was dressed like a Miko, and the young girl in her arms had 9 short blonde tails wrapped around her, but otherwise had the same features as the woman holding her. "And you would be?" "Yasaka," she uttered plainly. "Kurama is my husband and my daughter's father because he's sealed within you. The title of 9-tailed demon lord falls to me. It's why I need to ask you a favor." Naruto nodded, temporarily disarming his animosity. "Of course, how can I help you?" Yasaka approached Naruto. After biting her lip, Naruto's eyes widened impossibly as he said, "I want you to make Kuoh a member of your peerage. And to take care of her for me. I understand that this is a lot to ask of you, but as the leader of Yukai in Kyoto, if I were to ever go missing, the duties would fall to Kuoh. I would never ask you to do this if it weren't important. But Kuoh is much too young to lead Kyoto's Yukai. Maybe with some experience under a proper leader and with a good teacher, she can become one." Glancing down, Naruto embraced the young 9-tailed fox kid and then smiled softly as he ran his hand over her silky golden hair. After giving a nod, he produced a rook and pressed it to the young girl's forehead. "This is a contract between the two of us. Kuoh-chan, I'll do everything in my power to help you become the leader of Yukai you were meant to become. This is our contract, which I will release you from once the terms and conditions have been fulfilled. May you find happiness under my care and as my precious rook." The contract was sealed when the girl's body blended with the red rook. "Thank you," said Yakasa, "keep her safe." As the two departed the clubhouse and vanished into the night, Naruto nodded and watched. Naruto sighed to himself after glancing down at the girl who was sleeping. How could he have earned this? There was no better time for the morning. When the girls from Naruto's peerage got closer to the clubhouse, they saw that Sakura and Ino were waiting for one of them to open the front door. Not that it was needed, but Hinata came over with the keys. The door swung open, revealing a small girl with golden eyes and blonde hair sitting on Naruto's shoulder. She was dressed in a Miko outfit and had 9 blonde tails behind her. Each girl gave Naruto a wary look. Naruto laughed to himself. "Hey, girls, sorry about this, but I'll explain Kunoheim's presence after we get this meeting started. Just take a seat while I make some tea, okay?" All of the girls nodded and sat down wherever they felt most comfortable. Even though Sakura appeared more worn out, Ino's hand on the young pinkette's appeared to calm her frazzled nerves as they sat together on the love seat with multiple cups of fresh green tea. Naruto returned with the young girl still sitting on his shoulder. Sakura's hand continued to shake as he passed them out, even after she took a sip of the calming tea. Sakura nodded and took another sip of tea. "All right. The first thing to do is to respond to all of Sakura-chan's inquiries and give her some direct answers." "What happened last night," she said bluntly, "was that some kind of weird dream, or did all of that really happen?" Naruto let out a sigh. "Everything you felt, heard, and saw last night was absolutely real. You and Issei were stabbed in the stomach by a spear of light, a weapon employed by angels and fallen angels to kill devils like myself and the other club members." Sakura's response to Naruto and his peers suddenly extending their bat-like wings as evidence was rather typical. She exuded fear, amazement, shock, and a slight sense of sadness. "Ino-chan found one of my flyers in your backpack and made a wish on it. She wished for me to save your life. Normally, that wouldn't be possible, but devils of my caliber are given something called evil pieces to recruit humans, Yukai, and other devils to our side. Everyone in this club is both a devil and a member of my peerage. People who have accepted an evil piece and essentially have become my servants under normal circumstances. I would have much rather asked you to join my peerage of your own free will. Everyone here except for you and Kunoheim willingly accepted the piece. Though Kunu's mother accepted her being placed in my peerage in her stead. You were my first revival via an evil piece." Whimpering, "So I'm your servant? Your slave," she said. "Never my slave," Naruto firmly declared. "When I asked you to join the club, I was indirectly offering you a chance to join my peerage. I'd much rather have your permission than to simply raise you from the dead and give you no choice in the matter. I will never make you do anything you don't want to do, but you will have certain duties to attend to as a member of my peerage." Sakura inquired, "Does that mean Ino's in your peerage?" After Naruto's candid responses seemed to soothe her. Naruto gave a headshake. "No, but I did tell her that she had followers' rights should you join, that she could join as well, but I believe she has something to tell you first." Despite her slight annoyance at being placed on the spot, Ino thanked him before turning to Sakura unexpectedly. Ino revealed her silver-gray wings. "I never wanted you to find out about this, but as we grew closer, I've been slowly trying to find a way to tell you. You see, my name is Ino Yamanaka and I'm a fallen angel hybrid." "Hybrid?" Sakura inquired. "Her parents weren't both fallen angels. I even suspect that her mother is human and her father is a fallen angel," Naruto said, surprising both of them. "It's not uncommon to hear they exist, but it's not exactly something you come across often." "Your mother, was she a psychic?" Ino grinned. "That explains the powerful mental defenses you showed, as well as your ability to create and fight with spears of light without needing to touch them. It's a very unique ability. Psychokinesis and telekinesis, the ability to infiltrate the minds of others and the ability to manipulate objects from a distance. For someone your age, you're very strong in both your psychic abilities and your fallen angel skills. So what's this about fallen angels and devils?" Naruto sipped his tea and sighed. "In the old days, angels, devils, and fallen angels fought against one another. They were mortal enemies during a time known as the Great War. However, thousands of casualties on each of the three sides made the three factions stop fighting and try to bring their numbers back. For devils, it's known as the evil piece system. It's based on the game of chess and has 15 pieces total. Hinata-chan is my queen, Karen-chan is my bishop, Yugito-chan, Haku-chan, and Hanabi-chan are 3 of my 8 total pawns. Finally, you, Sakura-chan, and Kuno-chan are my 2 rooks. So does that mean that I can never be with Ino-chan now that I'm a devil?" she said sorrowfully. Together, Naruto and Ino said, "No," before Naruto went on. "That was back in the old ages. Sakura-chan, while some devils and fallen angels might look down upon your relationship, nobody in my peerage will, and neither will I. You two care deeply about one another. I'm not going to keep you from being with her simply because our races might have been enemies at one point long before I even existed." Sakura said with hope. "Then, can you make Ino-chan a devil too?" Naruto grinned and nodded before turning to face Ino. "You can become a devil, if you want. Sakura seems to really want to keep you around, but it's your choice." Tears streamed down Ino's face as she nodded without hesitation. "Yes, if it will keep me near Sakura-chan, then I'll become a devil." "Good," Naruto said, taking a red pawn from his pocket and giving it to her. "As of this moment, you have accepted the offer to become my servant. You are to keep Sakura-chan safe and ensure her happiness as best as you can. Do you accept the terms and conditions of this contract, fallen angel hybrid Ino Yamanaka?" Ino gave a nod. "I accept the terms and conditions you have stated, Devil King Naruto Uzumaki." The pawn melted into her skin, and her body glowed red. "Then rise, Ino-chan. As my selfless pawn, may happiness find its way into your heart as you continue to serve me for the rest of your days." A pair of bat-like wings also emerged beneath her silver-gray wings, and Ino felt a surge of strength that was like a warm shower or a trip to the hot springs. Ino rose and bowed politely, giving her new master a barely obstructed view of her C-cup cleavage. "Treat me well, master," she said with a giggle before sitting back down with Sakura placed on her lap. Naruto grinned at the sight before Kuno decided to give his golden locks a tug, reminding him of her presence. "Now that that's settled, I guess it's time to explain Kunoheim's reason for being here and why I made her my second rook." Naruto sighed tiredly. "Well, as soon as I got here last night to try and turn in, I was met with Son Goku-sama about a serious matter. Apparently, all 9 of the demon lords will be at a secret meeting. However, since I contain Kurama, the 9-tailed demon lord, his wife, Yusaka, approached me to inform me that she will be taking his position. By doing so, she would be inadvertently leaving their only daughter, Kuno, in charge of Kyoto's Yukai population. Feeling her to be too young, she asked me to allow Kuno to join my peerage and to help her become the leader that Yusaka-sama believes she will eventually become once she becomes older. Until then, she will be living, eating, training, and performing duties with us as my second rook." The girls all nodded, though Sakura raised her hand again. "Is it common for a parent to leave their children in the welfare of a devil?" Naruto shook his head negative. "Not entirely, but if a Yukai or a devil is doing something they believe is too dangerous to leave their children on their own, they know that some devils, like myself, We'll keep them safe and help them grow stronger in their absence. Sakura and Ino both nodded, still mostly unaware of the way devils function. For now, I think it would do us well to meet up with another devil's peerage, make some new friend, ya know. For an instant, Karen's eyes widened. She started to say, don't tell me you, but a doorbell rang. That must be them, I'll get it, Haku-chan, he said, strolling off toward the door and causing Haku to sit back down in curiosity. The sound of the door opening and Naruto's warm greeting got the other girls rather curious as to who this devil king was. Until they spotted Rias Gremory, all grown up, walking arm in arm with Naruto, followed by her peerage that consisted of 2 boys, one of which was easily identified as Issei Hyodo, and 2 girls walked in behind them. Hinata, recognizing Rias quite easy enough, got up from her seat and wrapped her arms around the girl. Hinata took a moment to stand back and examine Rias from head to toe, comparing her appearance to that of a child. Oh my, Hinata said with a small blush. You've grown up so much since we were kids, Rias-chan. Hanabi walked over and began to grope Rias' sizable chest before absent-mindedly squeezing her own B-cup breasts as Hanabi walked to a corner and started to complain about Rias' large breasts while she was stuck looking like a loli. A tiny cloud formed above her head. So unfair. Rias just chuckled and pressed her bust into Naruto's arm. Then, just like Hinata had done earlier, Karen started to float toward her and examine her. Karen growled as black sparks began to ignite over her hands. Looks like you've finally grown a pair, Miss Mosquito Tits, she said. A black aura of fire surrounded her own hands, and Rias snarled, and you still have the brain the size of a peanut, you big-breasted whore. Naruto started to choke back a laugh, but then he just started laughing so hard that he collapsed to the ground, tears streaming from his eyes except for Hinata, Haku, Hanabi, and Yugito. Everyone stared at him as if he were crazy, but that was mainly because Karen was currently glaring at Rias. Just like when we were kids, he said as he wiped a tear from his eye and got back to his feet. You two will never change. Issei came over to him briefly. Why aren't you trying to break them up? They could destroy your clubhouse if they aren't stopped soon. Naruto smiled and gestured to a blue seal that was glowing beneath the two. The 2 fighting girls were suddenly surrounded by a glacier. I've known Rias and Karen for ages. Growing up they'd always fight like that until Hinata-chan or Haku-chan would keep them from doing anything worse than glaring at each other. I'm actually happy they haven't changed much deep down inside. They acknowledge the other as their greatest rival by acknowledging one another. They force themselves to grow stronger so as not to be left behind by the other. Knowing that they were merely vying for his heart, Hinata and Naruto's peers shuddered. Naruto smiled warmly and said, now, how about we let Karen-chan and Rias-chan defrost before we introduce ourselves to one another? Haku-chan, can you go get our guests some snack and tea for me? Haku bowed to her master and guests while sporting her French-maid attire. Showing off her C-cup bust, she smiled warmly and said, right away, master, before gliding across the room to the kitchen. When he became a harem king, Issei asked again, hoping for some assistance. Does she do that on purpose or do you make her call you master? Naruto let out another sigh as his head began to sag. She does it on her own. Karen-chan does it too. But the feeling behind it is different between the two. Haku genuinely seems to prefer calling me master, even though I always ask her to call me Naruto or Naruto-kun. I guess after years of hearing it, I just try and tune it out when one of the girls slips and calls me master instead of Naruto-kun. So all of these girls, how do you do it? Do what? Naruto said, genuinely perplexed. Issei finally said, get all of these smoking hot girls to join your peerage, his voice tinged with jealousy. Kuno hid behind Naruto's pant leg and tugged gently, saying, I've been friends with Hinata-chan, Hanabi-chan, Karen-chan, Haku-chan, and Yugito-chan for ages. Sakura-chan, Ino-chan, and Kuno-chan all joined recently. What is it, Kuno-chan? She said simply, that brown-haired boy is a pervert, papa, which made everyone laugh and made Issei feel foolish for being called out as a pervert by a young girl. Naruto laughed, I know he is, sweetheart, just try to remember. If he does something pervy around you, tell Karen and she'll zap him so hard his heart will explode within his chest. Okay. Kuno nodded after grinning broadly. Kuno said, okay, papa, and then skipped off to play with Hinata. Everyone except Rias, who was about halfway thawed, accepted the explanation with ease. For the record, he said, as a couple of Rias' peers were starting to open their mouths, I'm not her real father, I just look like him enough that Kuno can't really tell the difference. But Rias saw what he was withholding from them and acknowledged it with a nod. After Rias and Karen had defrosted and returned to their separate groups a few minutes later, Karen was cuddling closer to Naruto while pretending that she was still a little chilly from being frozen earlier. Everyone knew she was lying, of course, but they didn't question it for fear of getting zapped like a bug in a bug zapper. A huge boobed bug zapper with a few buttons undone on her blouse, dressed in a very skimpy Kuoh Academy uniform. If Issei's smoking, charred corpse in the center of the room was any indication, it was one that he frequently approached too closely. "All right," said Naruto cheerfully, "let's introduce ourselves." After nodding to her best friend, Rias turned to face Sakura, Ino, and Kuno, who was seated on Naruto's lap while he caressed her blonde hair. "Rias-chan, you and your peerage can go first." "Simply, my name is Rias Gremory," she stated. "I'm a high-class devil like Naruto-kun and act as the king of my peerage. I like playing chess and spending time with my friends. I also can't fall asleep unless I'm naked. My goal is to become a strong devil and eventually have a strong family with a certain boy." Everyone watched to see how Naruto would respond, but they were disappointed and strangely amazed that the young devil was so unaware of such a clear and direct hint, as he just kept grinning and petting the adorable blonde girl curled up on his lap, dozing off. As Naruto had done earlier, a girl with black hair and a slightly larger bust than Rias giggled but stopped herself. "My name is Akano Hamejima. I'm Rias Bucko's queen. I enjoy helping Rias Bucko in her duties as a devil. My goal is to serve Rias Bucko to the best of my ability until I find someone to share my heart with." A boy with blonde hair and bright blue eyes who appeared to be able to pass for Naruto's older brother came next. "My name is Kiba Yuto. I am Rias Knight. I hate fallen angels. I like my friends and helping out. My dream is to kill a certain group of people." Only Kiba and a few others noticed, but Ino and Akano appeared to flinch. However, Naruto's most unexpected response was a slight frown, but he wouldn't discuss what was upsetting him. A white-haired loli with hazel eyes consuming a piece of chocolate came next. "My name is Kaneko Teju. I'm Rias Rook. I like chocolate and my friends. My dream is to find my sister, Kuroka, and bring her to justice." When Naruto heard Kaneko say she didn't hate her sister or want to kill her, but rather wanted to bring her to justice, his frown hardly lifted. Kaneko appeared somewhat taken aback before nodding and flashing her tail and cat ears. "You're a Nekomata, aren't you, Kaneko? Don't worry, you aren't the only Yukai in the room. You'll find out later who the Yukai are though." Issei was going to say something next, but Naruto cut him off in a flash. "Issei, everyone here knows who you are, and I have a feeling that if you tell us your likes and dreams, you won't make it out of the building alive or unharmed or on your own power." "Kuno-chan and that blonde girl don't know me," Issei shot back. When Naruto said, "His name is Issei Hyodo. He likes boobs and peeking at the girls' changing room in the gymnasium. His dream is to build his own harem of girls to serve his every desire," Ino and Kuno, who was just beginning to wake up, gave him a glare. Issei glanced around and saw that many of the girls in Naruto's peerage appeared prepared to murder him as soon as he approached them. "See? They already want to kill you now. If you were to say that, you would be frozen, electrocuted, burned, stabbed, beaten, and generally pummeled until you could barely stand under your own power. Do you believe me now?" Issei nodded and looked a little scared, but his body was trembling as he retreated from the big group of irate girls. "I forgot to mention that he is my pawn," Rias acknowledged. After giving a nod, Naruto gestured for Hinata to go first. Hinata bowed to the group and nodded as Naruto choked on some of his tea. She giggled and said, "My name is Hinata Hyuga. I'm Naruto-kun's queen and a mid-class devil of the Hyuga clan and its heiress. I like spending time with Naruto-kun, my friends, and the rest of his harem." Naruto stammered, "It's not a harem, Hinata-chan." Despite some blood trickling from his nose, Hinata's laughter increased. "I also like cinnamon buns. My dream is to become strong enough to help my clan rise in the 72 Pillars community and help Naruto fulfill his dream." After giving Naruto a nod of recognition, Karen stood up next to him. She growled as she drew her body closer to Naruto's. "My name is Karen Uzumaki Carmilla. I'm half vampire and half succubus, making me a damn fear. I'm Naruto's second cousin and his bishop. I like flirting, teasing, and seducing my master," she said. "I don't like Miss Mosquito Tits, who seems to have finally grown a proper pair of breasts since I last saw her. My dream is to help my master bring the Uzumaki clan back to its proper place, have many Uzumaki sons and daughters, and helping my master with his dream." By this time, Naruto was nearly unconscious from his beloved bishop's serious advances. The pinkette, Sakura, rose next, but Ino was standing beside her, her head resting on her shoulder and her slender arms encircling the girl's waist. "My name is Sakura Haruno and I'm new to this devil thing. I'm Naruto-kun's rook. My likes are learning and my beloved girlfriend, Ino-chan. I don't really have any dislikes. My dreams, well, I guess it's to help Naruto out with his dream, but I don't know what it is yet, and to live a happy life with Ino-chan, Naruto, and his peerage." Issei was lying on the ground, Bleeding profusely from his perverted thoughts about the lesbian couple, Kuoh stretched her arms above her head and yawned to herself before grabbing a piece of toast and munching on it. My name is Kuoh, I'm Papa's rook too, I'm a nine-tailed fox and a devil, I like my papa, my mama, and my friends. My dream is to grow up, get stronger, and learn how to lead the Kyoto Yukai under Papa's leadership and guidance. The girl's excitement made Rias and Akeno laugh. The only thing that makes Yugito, the fourth blonde girl in the room, stand out is her dark black eyes. She pointedly added, my name is Yugito ni, I'm Naruto-kun's pawn, I'm also a Nekomata, Matabi's only daughter, and a devil. I like Naruto and my friends, I dislike perverts, though there are some exceptions to that rule. You, Issei, aren't one of them, which made Issei feel a little down. My dreams are to eventually learn and master Senjutsu and Yujutsu and help Naruto fulfill his dream. When Kaneko heard Yugito's desire to learn and become an expert in such a terrible, in her opinion, art, she briefly turned to face her in terror. The circumstances surrounding her sister's exile were still very much in the news. Sakura held up her hand. Naruto, what are Senjutsu and Yujutsu? Senjutsu is an art that allows Yukai, like Kuoh, Yugito, and Kaneko, to enhance their bodies using the natural energy of the planet by drawing it into their bodies. However, Senjutsu is a very dangerous art that, while it increases your overall power and abilities by 100-fold, it also forces you to experience all of the hatred the world has built up. It's incredibly difficult to learn unless you have someone who has mastered it to help you along. Yujutsu or demonic spells and skills that are practiced by certain Yukai. For instance, as Matabi-sama's daughter, one Yujutsu skill allows Yugito to enhance her blows with a blue, ghostly fire. With further training, she could even use that blue fire to project as a powerful attack or enhance it to the point that nothing it touches will ever pass through it. She then followed up by asking, then who is Matabi-sama? Naruto grinned at the girl's curiosity. Matabi is known as the two-tailed Hellfire Cat and one of the 9 demon lords of the underworld. She is on par with an ultimate-class devil and could possibly, if it ever came down to it, defeat Seraphal Leviathan, one of the 4 great Satans, in a battle, though she wouldn't come out uninjured while strong by most devil standards. Seraphal Leviathan is supposedly the weakest of the 4 great Satans. After giving herself a nod, Sakura took a seat on Ino's lap. Next, Haku stood up and bowed to their guests, which Issei exploited by gazing at her breasts from deep within her dress until a rogue icicle nearly skewered him. My name is Haku Citri, I'm Master Naruto's pawn and self-appointed maid. I'm a mid-class devil of the Citri clan and the youngest of 3 sisters, Sona Citri, our student council president, and Seraphal Leviathan, one of the 4 great Satans. My likes are my master, pleasing my master, helping my master, and ensuring that my master is well taken care of. My dream is to eventually marry my master, give birth to a few children of my own, and ensure my master's dream becomes a reality. Everyone saw Naruto's head repeatedly fall during this type of introduction, as if he were hitting an invisible table or wall. As Naruto kept doing this, more blood appeared to be trickling down his nose. Finally, Hanabi got up and Haku sat down. I'm Hanabi Hyuga, Hinata's twin sister, she firmly declared. Issei opened his mouth to speak, but Hanabi's glare made it close. Akeno appeared to blush when she heard such obscene threats directed at her best friend's pawn, but she did nothing to stop it. If you say that we don't look like twins because our boobs are smaller than hers, I'll personally rip off that pathetic lump of flesh you call your penis and shove it so far down your throat you'll choke to death on your own testicles. The violent and obscene threat against him made even Issei pale, and he quickly stopped talking. Karen snorted angrily as she muttered something about wanting to consummate her relationship with her true love. I like spending time with my sister and the rest of Naruto's peerage, and I hate how much of a whore Karen acts like when Naruto is anywhere in a 5-mile radius of her. My dream is to get married, have kids, and help Naruto with his dream. The third person in the room with blue eyes and blonde hair, but this one was a woman, came last. My name is Ino Yamanaka, I'm Naruto's pawn and also a fallen angel hybrid. My father is a fallen angel and my mother is a powerful psychic. I like spending time with Sakura-chan and learning all I can about devils, Yukai, and other things that my teachers may have lied to me about during my training. My goal is to grow old with Sakura-chan as my wife, to get to know Naruto-kun and his peerage better, and to eventually help Naruto with his dreams. Naruto stood up and said, that's it for my peerage, as Kuoh ascended to her perch on his shoulder. I suppose it's time for my introduction. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I'm a pure blood devil of the Uzumaki clan. I am also the last of my clan, designating me as its heir and the clan head. My clan's power is known as the power to subjugate hatred. While not a combat-oriented power like Ria's power of destruction, my power has its uses. It was first used by Mito Uzumaki in combination with her husband's ability to create trees from nothing to subjugate Kurama, the nine-tailed fox and the strongest demon lord to ever exist. He is also Kunu's father. He was sealed within Mito Uzumaki with the hopes that she would continuously subjugate the hatred within him from his failed attempt at learning and mastering senjutsu. Sadly, that didn't happen. By the time she was on her deathbed, she had to choose another Uzumaki to contain Kurama and hopefully subjugate his built-up hatred. This new Uzumaki was my mother, Kushina, a woman heralded as the strongest female devil in the underworld and candidate for Satan Red, the strongest member of the four great Satans. Sadly, as she was giving birth to me, someone came in and forcefully unsealed Kurama from her body. Because Kushina and Mito had slowly whittled away at Kurama's hatred, he was significantly weaker than he would have been. My parents were forced to use me, the last of our clan with the power to subjugate hatred flowing through my veins, as Kurama's guardian and to drain it of all of the hatred built up within its body until he was able to return to the underworld with his mind free of all of the hatred his senjutsu practice had built up. Then she hugged Naruto's head. For now, my goal in life is simple: to get rid of the rest of Kurama's hatred and free him to finally be with his family again. My dream, once that's finished, is to get married, rebuild the Uzumaki clan, and become one of the four great Satans so that I can bring peace to the underworld. Before she charged Naruto and punched him in the face, Kaniko's fist clenched. However, rather than knocking him down, his head merely twisted violently to the side. Kaniko fled the room as tears welled up in her eyes. At first, Naruto's eyes were wide, but they soon became much softer. Biting her lip, Rias bowed apologetically to Naruto. "I'm sorry, Naruto-kun," she apologized. "I'll bring her back to apologize later. There was no sense in her striking you." With a laugh, Naruto dismissed it. "Don't worry, I've been seeing cues as to what her problem is. I probably shouldn't have said as much as I did about my power." The eyes of everyone widened. She first reacted shocked when I asked if she was a Nekomata. Nekomata have a powerful connection with senjutsu. The second was when I recalled her dream a moment ago. Her sister must have practiced senjutsu and she hurt someone in her rage. The third was when Yugito commented on her dream of learning and mastering senjutsu and yujutsu. She became afraid of what would happen, meaning she'd seen or heard of the results firsthand. If I had known back when her sister used senjutsu, I would have tried to fix it, but she had no knowledge of that. She only knows that I have a power to almost subjugate someone under senjutsu-induced madness and that I did nothing to stop it. If I were her, I probably would have done the same thing. In fact, I'd have been incredibly upset if she didn't lash out. It would mean she was bottling up her anger. Never a good thing. It's better just to let it out at once, doing something constructive like writing or drawing or training on some poor, hapless sap who is practically nothing more than a living, breathing training dummy. Issei felt like he wanted to vanish at this point because he knew that remark was directed only at him. "So you're just going to let her get away with hitting you," said Akeno. Naruto gave a nod. "Yep, pretty much. You're not going to chase her down, chastise her, or try to talk some sense into her," Kiba responded. "Nope." "Why?" Issei inquired, certain that he had everyone's attention. "Simply put, because of my power," Naruto said. "My clan, the Uzumaki clan, has the power to subjugate hatred, as I've no doubt you remember. We also have the ability to absorb any hatred directed at others onto ourselves. It's what makes our clan so durable, whether it be physical or emotional. We've been able to endure all kinds of hatred and animosity directed at us by others. It's how we've made so many friends over the years. Truth be told, Yugito actually tried to kill me the first time we met, thinking I was just another devil out to ask her mother to join my peerage. That was when I was 5. Well, after a year of being spiteful at me, she finally asked me why I still played with her even after all she'd done to me. That was my answer, because I knew I could take it." Although Yugito appeared somewhat embarrassed by the story he used to describe how his power operated, it was effective. Akeno said, "So you're just going to wait it out," but it sounded more like a declaration. "You'll just wait it out until she decides to get over it. You may be waiting a long time before that happens." Naruto gave a nod. "That's sometimes the best way. Let her hate me, abhor my existence, get in a couple of shots, let her wear herself out until she gets so tired that she's willing to listen." Naruto laughed out loud. "Either that or hunt down her sister, tie her up, and bring her to Kaniko for interrogation. Though I doubt I could survive going head to head against someone of Kuroka's caliber just yet, especially if she's still using senjutsu or is still in a senjutsu-induced rage." Naruto didn't care that Kaniko was still acting cold around him days after the introduction. He just pretended that she wasn't upset with him. If anything, he grinned, gave her a hearty greeting. The young Nekomata didn't care about any of it. Rias didn't say anything or take any action to punish the girl for what Naruto thought was insignificant because he hadn't yet complained about how she treated him. Naruto then went on to explain to his three new devils how the system operated and how contractors could get what they wanted and pass out flyers to become stronger. When Kuoh went out on contracts for the first time, he or Hinata accompanied her to ensure that the client wasn't taking advantage of her innocence and youth to cheat on her. Fortunately, a lot of her contractors were mothers who needed someone to watch their kids. As a result, they let her work on a contract or two a day on her own, and they always accompanied her on one if the contractor asked for something that was too challenging for her to do alone, like reaching a high shelf for an elderly person or something similar. The contracts were fulfilled rather quickly, and the young Devil King was not surprised to see that Ino and Sakura were becoming stronger given how young Kuoh was for a nine-tailed fox yokai. The oldest known to exist was Kurama, who had lived since Adam and Eve roamed the earth. She wasn't far behind them either. The trio quickly became eager to begin training in their devil powers, but Sakura and Kuoh were a little let down to learn that their rook powers only improved their physical strength and defense. Naruto did, however, say that they could learn to perform magic like bishops and queens with the right training, but they would never be able to match the two royal pieces in terms of strength and endurance, just as knights would never be able to match rooks and queens. However, as demonstrated when Kuoh created a strong white flame known as Foxfire using her Jujutsu ability, this did not deter their desire to learn magic. It seemed to enhance her fighting skills by creating a distraction and then delivering a nasty sucker punch that was similar to being struck by a freight train traveling at about 30 miles per hour, even though it wasn't powerful enough to do more than burn an opponent. As she practiced, the flames would undoubtedly get stronger and more numerous over time, but Yugito also taught her how to keep the fire burning on her hands and feet without getting burned herself. Naturally, they required a lot of medication and burn cream to keep the burns she did sustain from becoming infected while she healed slowly. Fortunately, Akeno had enough knowledge of healing magic to assist them and conceal Karen's healing power from everyone, including Rias and her peers. As the day's training came to an end, Naruto was receiving a call from Rias. He opened his phone and responded as he usually did. He uttered the words, "Yash, Naruto Uzumaki reporting for duty," in brief. "Naruto-kun," Rias's well-known voice said over the phone. "An archduke has just informed me of two stray devil attacks happening around the town. The one my peerage will head to is in the warehouses where a stray devil has been spotted luring humans away and devouring them. I wanted to ask you if you'll take the one near the cemetery. Supposedly, girls have been following a strange figure there only to be raped and killed before being buried in unmarked graves." When Naruto said, "Yeah, Rias," his lighthearted tone abruptly vanished. Looking back, he recalled something strange about today. "Me and my peerage will head down there tonight and investigate. Now that you mentioned it, Katase and Murayama haven't been to school all day. They've never missed a day of school, till today. It isn't like them." Rias stated, "We'll search the warehouse for them. Hopefully, they were just sick, but if one of the strays has them, we'll save them," said Naruto. "Watch out for one another and stay safe, Rias-chan." Rias said, "You too, Naruto-kun," and the two ended the call at the same time. He called out, "Sakura-chan, Ino-chan, Kunoheim," attracting the three of them. "I just got a call to investigate some strange disappearances around the cemetery. Chances are that it's being caused by a stray devil. You girls are about to get your first taste of what devil combat is like. Tell Hinata-chan, Hanabi-chan, and Karen-chan to meet us at the club after school and tell them the mission details." With a nod, the three of them went to find their companions. The six were gathered at the cemetery's gates. A few hours later, Naruto turned to face Karen. "Do you sense anything, Karen?" Karen shut her red eyes and concentrated on the energy surrounding her. Her eyes opened a few seconds later. "I sense two human signatures, but they're incredibly weak. Near those two signatures is a fairly weak devil's signature. Our stray," Naruto declared definitively. Hinata and Hanabi, Byakugans at the ready, nodded and activated their clan's notorious power, which allowed them to see everything within a fairly large radius. "And those two humans may be Katase and Murayama. Be careful. We approach with caution." The two humans, who appeared to be seriously injured and would not survive any longer in these conditions, were indeed their missing school friends. The six realized as they neared the center of the graveyard. "Come out, stray devil Gagori. Your final judgment is what we are here to deliver. Give up now and die, at least with honor." A male wearing a business suit approached them with a bloody butcher's knife, or at least it appeared to be a man wearing one. The top half was unmistakably male and wore a suit top, but the bottom half was a mangled, twisted mess of limbs, pus, and other disgusting liquids. A wicked laugh pierced the fog. "That bastard said the Archduke would send someone strong to test my skills on, but I never thought it would be some pathetic kid and his friends," the man said in a distorted voice. "Do you truly think I'd surrender to a pathetic devil hunter like you and your group?" "All right, then," he said firmly, "by the name of Uzumaki, I shall watch as your body disappears into the empty void for devouring your master in hopes of gaining his strength as your own. He pointed to the monstrosity in front of Ino, Sakura, and Kuoh and explained how devil battles operate and how your role in these battles is more significant than you think it is. The girl turned to face him as he said, "For the next minute, Hanabi, I promote you to the role of knight." Her speed instantly doubled compared to its usual level. "Show that monster what you're capable of." "That is the pawn's special ability," said Hanabi, grinning and charging forward, her palms glowing fiercely as her body left behind afterimages that attested to her speed. The capacity to advance to any royal pisa with the exception of king. Her speed is nearly unparalleled. As a knight she can see any attack coming at her from any direction and move quickly enough to easily avoid it thanks to her clan's power, the Byakugan. Additionally, her clan created a unique fighting method that directs energy into their palms, which they use to target an opponent's internal organs. She can puncture his lungs, destroy his muscles, destroy his liver, and even cause his heart to burst in his chest with a single, quick touch. Because of this, her role as a pawn and knight is crucial. She could also play rook in a similar way, but because of her strange talent for making the majority of the magic spells she learned explode in on her, she would never be able to ascend to the position of bishop or queen. She slammed her glowing palms into the monster's legs as Hanabi ran around the incoming blows from his big butcher knife, sending him sprawling to the ground in agony before pulling back to Naruto's side. "Karen, you're up next." Karen nodded and laughed with delight as she walked up to the fallen monster in front of her. She directed her black lightning into her hands and then launched bolts toward the fallen creature, making it scream in agony. "Anyone who mocks my master will pay the price with their lives," she declared. Naruto grinned. She may be an outrageous flirt, but she's also incredibly protective of her friends and will fry anyone who threatens them. Ino and Sakura both winced, but Kuoh was staring on in wonder and amazement. She turns into a sadistic woman who has no qualms about causing her target to suffer when she is defending others. In this way she uses a darker, more malevolent style of magic than most pure devils like me because she is a succubus and a vampire. Depending on her intentions, she can make the spells as black as the wings of a fallen angel. Her spells get darker and more potent the more she plans to harm and torment the target. Karen floated back toward Naruto and kissed him on the cheek, but even that seemed to indicate that she wanted to rape him right then and there. Witnesses or no witnesses, Sakura and Ino noticed that Karen was sounding rather orgasmic about torturing the monstrous stray devil and appeared to be on the edge when Naruto called her back. "As my queen, Hinata possesses the skills of the rook, knight, and bishop. However, since you have already witnessed the knight and bishop in action, she will only require the abilities of the rook and knight for this. She will only use the knight's speed to increase her mobility so that she can land her blows more successfully." Cocking her arm back, Hinata delivered a single blow to the monster's leg, causing it to break rather loudly and bend at an odd angle. Then, she moved toward the hand holding the butcher knife and delivered a vicious kick that audibly broke several of the bones and cartilage in his hand, forcing him to drop his knife and let it clatter to the ground uselessly. After a few more well-placed blows and the sounds of bones breaking, shattering, or disintegrating completely, the monster lay there now, bloody, broken, and dying. Naruto approached Gremory with a chilly expression on his face. He said, "I hope your soul burns for all eternity in the Shinigami's stomach," before reaching out to touch the monster's head, taking it off, and moving toward the cages. The monster launched itself at him. But Sakura and Ino's cries were unjustified because the creature appeared to vanish in front of them in a massive explosion. The girls smiled, but Hinata was the first to speak. "Naruto-kun has several abilities at his disposal. You just witnessed his use of rune magic, a very complex and challenging kind of magic that only the most committed attempt to comprehend. But Naruto is essentially a super genius and picked up the skill quickly. He has gotten so good that even ultimate class devils have put him in a different league. He even got the nickname, Runecaster Supreme, from the four great Satans simply because of his ability to imprint runes on an opponent without a magic circle by touching a part of their body at the age of 12. As Naruto broke the locks on the cage and laid out the two bleeding girls, he took out his two knight pieces, placed them on their bodies, and watched as they fused with the two while murmuring a few words to himself. Sakura and Ino appeared impressed by the achievement, and Kuoh ran up and jumped on her papa's head, hugging him and congratulating him for defeating such a strong stray devil. The girl ran to Naruto when he called, "Hanabi, you know where Katase and Murayama live, right?" Hanabi nodded. "All right, you can leave after bringing them home and getting rid of their bloody clothing. I'll personally inform them of Monday's events and extend an invitation to join the club and my peerage to them." With a nod, Hanabi lifted the two girls onto her shoulders, demonstrating the strength she had developed through rigorous training. She then started to run to her two Kendoka friends' apartments and drop them off, but not before destroying their bloody clothing. I hope you three learned a lot from that demonstration, ladies, Naruto said, grinning at the other girls. To further develop your already improved skills and teach you new ones, I anticipate that you will join the girls and me for more strenuous physical training. You should be aware that I am not allowed to advertise my pawns during a raiding game. Instead of depending solely on their ability to promote, they are forced to rely on their own skills, which increases their chances of getting promoted for a better performance. However, it should be a few more years before we have to worry about raiding games. Although Rias and I are not yet old enough or experienced enough to take part in one, that information is still very important, and I won't promote you in some sparring sessions. Since your spears of light have the potential to kill your opponent, you are not allowed to use them during a spar, Ino. However, during your sparring matches, you are not restricted to using anything other than your spears. Find a weapon you feel comfortable using and work on improving your speed. Since you will be able to use your telekinesis against your opponent, perhaps even more, but don't rely solely on your psychic abilities to wield the weapon. Instead, train your body to use it when you do use the weapon in conjunction with your telekinesis. This might help you feel more comfortable using it before advancing to swords and other more powerful weapons. I would advise beginning with knives and daggers for the time being. Sakura and Kuoh shared the same expression, although Kuno's was a mix of the previous and a feeling of respect for the strength her papa had displayed earlier. Ino nodded, a fresh resolve burning in her eyes that wanted to show Naruto that he wasn't wrong in making her his pawn. Naruto created a transportation circle in a matter of seconds, and after everyone was within its range, he moved the group back to the clubhouse with ease. After a long day, they walked home. As a result, Naruto and Rias decided that it would be beneficial for their peerages to train together. After explaining this to their respective peerages, Naruto went on to explain to his group how they would start training. He would take Sakura, Ino, and Kuoh aside to introduce them to the fundamentals of magic and teach them some basic spells that would help them increase their magic power. The following day was Sunday, and the only reason the doors were open was for the clubs that had meetings to attend. In order to make one of the training dummies so durable that it would be nearly impossible to destroy without blasting it with a concentration of Rias' power of destruction, Hinata and Karen would practice by casting spells at it. With 50-pound weights on their legs and 25-pound weights on their arms, Yugito and Hanabi would run around the track at full speed for as long as they could before attempting to run a little farther. Since Haku had a preference for using ice magic, she would practice her strength and improve her blows using ice knuckles, which is ice magic's equivalent of brass knuckles, on a second training dummy that was set up similarly to how Karen and Hinata's dummy was. Now, to start off, I'm going to teach you a single spell, Sakura, Ino, and Kuoh said as they gathered around Naruto, noticing that his amiable expression had returned from what they had witnessed the previous evening. It's the most popular spell that devils learn to use from an early age, but because of its potential to gain power, even older, more seasoned devils continue to use it. As an illustration, Naruto pointed his finger at a third training dummy. The girls saw a glowing blue orb appear at the tip of his finger, shoot toward the dummy, and then strike it, causing a small explosion. That was a sample of my abilities, Naruto said. Normal people would assume a terrorist was bombing the school if I used it with my entire hand, which is usually easier. The girl's eyes widened, but Ino was the first to step up. She firmly said, "Let me try, Naruto-kun." Naruto nodded and moved behind her, closely blending her body with his as he adjusted her body to a much gentler stance. Now, Naruto whispered in her ear, making her blush profusely, "I want you to focus your power on the center of your palm and visualize it forming a sphere. Because the palm of your hand has a greater surface area, it is beneficial to concentrate there." Ino nodded, concentrated on the energy she used to create her spears of light, and moved it to the center of her palm. The energy glowed bright white and attempted to take the shape of a spear of light, but she resisted and attempted to transform it into a sphere. Sweat trickled down her face because the concentration required to complete this spell was so draining. When the energy finally took the shape of a sphere, Naruto grinned and said, "Now, feel your magic and use it to project the bullet toward the target as fast as you can." The other Jiris and Naruto were astounded by the bullet's quick trajectory toward the dummy, which left only a smoldering crater where the head should have been. Sakura and Naruto congratulated Ino on her achievement as she collapsed to the ground, gasping for air as she struggled to regain her strength. "Congratulations, Ino-chan," Naruto grinned and said, "You managed to create your own spell array of light. It was amazing to witness. Even though it wasn't what I had anticipated, you did a fantastic job, but we'll work on teaching you how to use your devil magic later while I instruct the others. Take a seat and unwind." Sakura ran up next, blushing from having a boy so close to her that she could feel his breath on her neck, and waited for Naruto to adjust her body's stance. It took her a little longer to connect with her magic power, and she was a little let down when her magic bullet appeared to be a marble, but Naruto just grinned at her. As a rook, you won't have as much magic power as a bishop or a queen, but that's only because your piece was meant to be a physical tank, he said candidly. I figured your magic bullet would look something like this, he said. I'm confident that if you keep honing your magic, you'll be able to create one roughly the size of your fist. Sakura nodded, and then the bullet suddenly shot forward with amazing speed, striking the target with a smoking hole through its heart and through a number of trees behind it before it just vanished. With hesitation, Naruto said, Sakura, bringing Sakura to see the fruits of her labor. She inquired, what happened? I think that because you have so little magic power available, the amount of control you have over it is amazing, Naruto said, closing his eyes and concentrating on describing the strange phenomenon. Your magic power will increase with proper training, but you should maintain the level of control you displayed not too long ago. As Kuoh scrambled up Naruto's clothes and landed on his shoulder, Sakura nodded and joined her girlfriend uninstructed. She pointed her palm at the target and did as she heard him instruct Sakura and Ino. Before Naruto could stop her, a huge ball of red energy materialized in her hand and shot straight toward the target. With the dummy gone, everyone was staring at Tama, or more precisely, at Kuoh in disbelief, and Kuoh just clapped her hands and giggled like a child. Kuoh, on the other hand, Sakura-chan, Naruto remarked in astonishment, has a lot of magic, but absolutely no sense of control over it. Much like myself. That might be as a result of her mother teaching her Ujutsu since she was a kid, since few devils will think she's a rook. They might undervalue her skills, which could be a good or bad thing. They might try to overwhelm her with numbers and overestimate her because of this. We will need to assist her in becoming stronger and more resilient so that, even in the event of an emergency, she can maintain a strong defense until help arrives. Sakura and Ino nodded, both slightly terrified of the power behind Kuno's magic rocket. Even Issei felt a little embarrassed to be confronted by a young girl. She could make a magic bullet, but he was unable to do something so basic that even Sakura could make one that functioned like a railgun, and Ino's was more like a cannon. All three of them were new devils, and it made him feel emasculated by comparison. As they kept training, Naruto noticed that Kaneko was eating a chocolate bar and watching the others train from the sidelines. Naruto smiled and said, "What's up, Kaneko?" in a disarming way. "Why aren't you training with everyone else?" Before returning to her chocolate, Kaneko gave him a fierce look and said, "I was wondering if you wanted to train with me a bit, but if you're busy." "Fine," she snarled as she and Naruto moved to the center of the field and assumed a fighting stance. Naruto matched her stance and waited for the young Nekomata to initiate contact before attempting to punch him in the stomach. The rook's endurance allowed her to shrug off the blow, but Naruto easily moved to the side and launched a kick at Kaneko's back, which connected. Kaneko grabbed the extended leg and spun around before launching her own kick at Naruto's face, which was easily blocked by the Devil King, though she could feel his wrist tense under the blow and knock down the sturdy tree. By this point, everyone was watching the match to see what would happen, and Kaneko lifted the tree with ease before cocking back for a throw. "Get smashed," she growled, as she sent the tree flying like a missile, but Naruto did nothing but point his extended knife-like hand toward the tree and wait, and it didn't take long to realize what he was doing. As the tree seemed to start splitting in two even halves upon touching his hand, the two halves fell behind him in two halves. Though something seemed strange about them, Issei tried to put his hand on the open half, but he withdrew when his hands felt like they touched a fire. "It's hot," he said, shaking his hand painfully to try to cool it down, and Akeno laughed as if she were telling herself a joke. She stated bluntly, "Of course it's hot." He applied wind magic to his hand, which caused enough friction to cut the tree in half like a hot knife slicing through butter. It was very clever of him to come up with something so differentiated. Only Kaneko appeared determined to harm her opponent, but everyone else remained silent as they watched the two battle, with even Rias appearing to acknowledge the response her queen had given them. Even now, she was trying to hurt him, to break his bones, to make him feel the pain she was feeling, but all he did was fucking smile at her like he was having fun, like he was taunting her. Kaneko was growling under her breath as she struggled to breathe from exerting her energy so quickly. Why was he still grinning? She never acknowledged him, and she always rejected his attempts to become her friend. She screamed, "Why won't you just die?" and then slammed her fist into Naruto's face, feeling it make contact with its target but not moving an inch. "Does it make things better?" he said, smiling knowingly and softly, "to put in your best effort to make someone feel the same way you do and discover that all he wants is to make you smile?" She screamed, "Shut up," and then struck his face with another fist. To see your sister murder her master in a fit of wrath that wasn't her own, to be persecuted merely for doing something so unimaginable and uncharacteristic that they fear you would quickly do the same to them. Just die, you bastard, she yelled once more as she struck his face once more while her hazel eyes were welling with tears. After that, you met a caring person, someone who didn't judge you because of your sister, Naruto continued without refrain. That's when Rias asked you to be her rook. You were so happy that someone wanted you that you weren't a threat to her, just a pal, someone in need of a companion. But didn't your heart and mind bear an unseen scar from your sister's betrayal? That's why you're afraid to learn senjutsu, Kaneko said, punching Naruto in the face once more. Though this time it was softer than the previous few blows. You're worried that senjutsu's curse will cause you to lose your temper, to lose your mind as a result of absorbing the world's hatred into your body. Why, she said, shedding tears onto his shirt. Why are you concerned? After all of the hurtful things I've said to you, why are you still so kind to me? Because it's within my power to take the hate and anger from others onto myself, Naruto said, grinning and ruffling the young girl's hair. Kaneko-chan, I was born with the stamina of a rook. I'm sorry you had to put up with me for so long, she sobbed through his chest. I've been able to put up with Rias-chan and Karen-chan constant fighting when we were kids. I think I can handle whatever you can dish out, Naruto said, caressing the girl's back and letting her tears stain his shirt. She whispered, Ni-san, will you be my Ni-san? Naruto nodded and grinned warmly. Obviously, Imoto-chan being your Ni-san will make me proud. A loud, ah, echoed across the field, and some of the girls even started crying, indicating that everyone in the vicinity thought the scene was cute. Naruto and Kaneko simply laughed to themselves, assuming it was just another day in the devil's life. Everyone was on their way to school on Monday morning, but two faces, Katase and Murayama, who were best friends and members of the Kendo Club, appeared extremely pale. The two had recently met up and started talking about their strange dream in which they were tortured by a monster and kept in a cage while he reminded them that once he dealt with some intruders, he was going to rape and kill them. The two were taken aback when they realized that some of their classmates, including Naruto, had come and somehow killed the monster before saving them. What shocked them, though, were the striking parallels between their dreams. As they got closer to the gate, they saw Naruto standing there, waiting for them while grinning warmly. He said, "Good morning, Katase-chan, Murayama-chan," as they began to rush toward him and embrace him, not knowing how to respond to his arrival. "Girls, how would you like to join my club?" Both of them enthusiastically nodded. Good. The two girls nodded enthusiastically, hoping for some kind of explanation for what they had gone through 2 nights prior. "Now, just follow me to the clubhouse and I'll introduce you to the other members and explain to the best of my ability what happened in your dreams." After a short while, the girls reached the clubhouse, where all of Naruto's peers were seated with a smile on their faces. Hanabi rushed to the two, and the three of them embraced as soon as Katase and Murayama were seated. Naruto was the only one left standing. Naruto stated bluntly, "As promised, I'll explain what really happened to you both Saturday night. However, I have to ask you one thing. Do you two think that angels and devils exist?" The two nodded hesitantly. "Good. A stray devil is the monster that tormented you two, a demon who committed unspeakably heinous acts in order to gain strength, such as killing or fleeing from their master. You see, this isn't the club that everyone thinks it is. Although it is our headquarters, it is also a valid club. This club's members are all devils. Now, as devils, we are frequently asked by our higher-ups, like the Archduke, to hunt down stray devils who threaten to reveal the supernatural worlds to the human realm," Katase and Murayama said, observing the girls and Naruto growing bat-like wings from their backs. "In order to rape and kill you like he had dozens of other women, that stray devil you two met used a strong, hypnotic charm to entice you to the cemetery. Fortunately, the two of you managed to withstand his influence long enough for someone to notice and alert the Archduke, who then told us. Under normal circumstances, your terrible wounds from that night would have killed you. I ultimately used my evil pieces to bring you both back to life, transforming you into devils just like us. I usually don't do that because it seems like you have no say in whether or not you want to be a member of my peerage. For this reason, I'm asking if you'd like to become a member of my club and become a peer." Before Katase began to ask her own questions, the two girls exchanged whispers. "So what would we have to do if we do decide to join? Would we have to call you master and serve you?" "You won't have to do anything you don't want to do, and you don't have to call me master if you don't want to," Naruto said, shaking his head. "I make an effort to ignore it, but Haku-chan and Karen-chan do." After Naruto declared himself a devil, the two girls grinned, pleased to see that he wasn't what they had anticipated. "But I thought devils were evil and tried to tempt humans to do bad things," Murayama said. "That is a common misconception, but not all devils are like that," Naruto said with a smile. "The majority of us merely wish to lead normal lives. The idea that the underworld is just fire and brimstone is another myth you should be aware of. With more landmass and less water, it is identical to the human realm. There are devils who treat their peers like slaves and servants. but there are also devils who treat their peers with friendship and respect. We'd love to join your peerage and club, Naruto-sama, the two girls said in unison after whispering to each other, nodding, and turning to face Naruto. Naruto clapped his hands, and a contagious smile appeared on his face. Wonderful. From now on, you two are my knights. Although you are faster by nature as my knights, you lack Sakura-chan's and Kuno-chan's raw strength and defense as my rooks. Knights usually use a weapon to increase their speed. This is typically a sword of some kind, but I've heard of knights who also carry knives, axes, and spears. Shinai will only serve to annoy any stray devils we might have to battle if we're called out again, so eventually I'll travel to the underworld to get you both a suitable weapon if you want. You can keep the weapons in the clubhouse and bring your Shinai to Kendo Club, but I doubt the other students would think well of you if you started carrying actual swords to class and fighting the perverted trio with them. With a dusting blush on both her and Maruyama's cheeks, Kataise asked, "Does this mean we can be your permanent bodyguards, Naruto-sama?" Naruto nodded. "If that's what you want to do, you still have to distribute flyers as part of your devil duties. It is your responsibility to assist in fulfilling the wishes of the people who take a flyer. You'll get stronger the more contracts you finish. The contracts you can fulfill will become more challenging as you gain strength, since your performance on these contracts affects me. A bad performance will lower my standing and result in us receiving fewer contracts, whereas a good standing will benefit us collectively and increase the number of contracts we can send out. You get it?" Naruto gave the girls a couple of small boxes of contracts, but instructed them to wait until school was out before passing them out. The two nodded, excited to begin their new responsibilities and keep Naruto's fangirls away from him as his loyal bodyguards. At the end of the day, school had gone by as usual, and Sakura and Ino had invited Naruto to join them as they explored the town and got to know each other better. However, their pleasant day was cut short when the three of them noticed Issei conversing with a girl dressed as a green and white nun, while Rainier stood across from them, grinning and threatening the two. Ino prepared a few spears of light and held two in her hand while standing next to Sakura, while Naruto stood behind the two with his arms crossed. Sakura's fist clenched in anger as she rushed toward the fallen angel, not realizing until it struck Rainer's face that a blood-red gauntlet covered her right hand, sending her tumbling to the ground. "Great," Rainier said, glaring at them with a look of rage at being hit so hard by the pink-haired girl who didn't seem to have much strength. "Fucking devils, more of them." "Fallen angel Rainier," Naruto said, his eyes and voice appearing to be frozen in a neutral glare, as he narrowed his eyes. "You are intruding on Uzumaki territory. I won't be able to stop my servants from killing you if you stay here any longer, and I think they won't think twice about doing so. I'm not in the mood to end your miserable life myself for attacking my friend's pawn and his girlfriend, so be grateful that I'm showing you this much mercy." With a sneer, Rainier called forth a pink spear of light and hurled it at Naruto, who merely raised his hand and said, "Rune. Barrier." A strange symbol materialized before them, forming a wall of light that sent the spear into the woods. Rainier snarled before taking off, uncertain that she could defeat three devils in addition to Issei should he choose to join the fight. As she flew off into the distance, she cried, "Your judgment day is coming, devils," before turning to glare at the nun. "You'll soon enough realize that joining these devils against us, Asia, is the worst mistake of your miserable life." After that, she vanished into the sky, and Issei appeared to be about to pass out. Naruto surmised that Asia, the nun, covered his bleeding wounds with her hands while blushing intensely as her power caused his wound to heal itself. Issei grinned at Sakura, Ino, and Naruto, who had removed her spears of light. He looked down at Sakura's gauntlet-covered arm and said, "I never thought I'd be glad to see you three," adding, "And you have the same sacred gear as I do. Sakura-san. Rainier told me once that you was twice critical. It's meant to make you twice as strong." Though he did notice Issei's error in calling Rainier Yuma, Naruto nodded. His feelings for the girl who nearly killed him were dwindling rapidly now that Asia was present, and speaking of Asia, the nun stood up after Issei was completely recovered and bowed to the three. "Thank you for saving us from Rainier," she said, adding, "I was told I wouldn't see Issei again, but I couldn't let that happen. My first friend was Issei, and I simply..." Sakura put her arms around Ino's waist and rested her head on the blonde's shoulder. "You didn't want to be lonely again," Sakura said. "I know the feeling." Asia nodded, but her blush just got darker and more noticeable. "Hey, Asia-san," said Naruto, "if you want, I can take you somewhere you can make lots of friends." "Really?" Asia clapped her hands together. "I would adore doing so." "I'm pretty sure Rias will be interested in hearing about this little incident, especially after she continued to warn you about befriending a nun," Naruto said, chuckling as he lifted Issei off the ground and placed him on his own feet. Issei quickly turned pale before muttering something about Rias Bucko giving him an earful and never hearing the end of it. I think what you did was pretty awesome. Personally defying your king in order to spend time with a loved one. Issei. You might not be such a bad guy, but the girls might think less of you if you would stop being such a huge pervert. Somehow, I seriously doubt that, he said, recalling the last time he was electrocuted after accidentally falling on Karen and squeezing her breasts. She then kicked him so hard that he landed on Akano, who then did the same thing. Karen did this continued for what seemed like hours until his charred corpse was left in the middle of the courtyard with a sign, "Kick the pervert," on his back. Needless to say, he was in excruciating pain for the following week until Rias healed him because she still had a use for him, and didn't want his death on her conscience. Issei groaned and said, "How come your peerage is only violent around me, Naruto?" The girls would just brush it off, blush, and go their separate ways when he ended up, accidentally, doing the same things as Naruto, and he would be brutally beaten when he did. Maybe it's because I'm not a pervert obsessed with breasts, Naruto said, shrugging his shoulders. The blonde-haired nun was grinning the whole way to school, either because she wasn't paying attention to the accusations made against Issei or because she was just having fun chatting with Sakura and Ino after explaining the situation to Rias in the Occult Research Club. Rias was furious with Issei for defying her, but she understood why he felt so strongly about it and offered Asia an opportunity to join her peerage, which Asia gladly accepted. Rias explained that God wasn't exactly receptive to the prayers of devils, but Asia never stopped smiling, preferring to think that God was happy she made friends even if it was with a bunch of devils. Unfortunately, when she tried to pray to God as thanks, she got a terrible migraine. As the others congratulated Asia on becoming Rias bishop, Naruto and Rias sat at a chessboard and played against each other. Those fallen angels and their adherents are intruding on our territory, Rias-chan. As you are aware, even that exorcist you told me about, he butchered a family simply for trying to contact you for a contract, he said sternly. This is the 4th time they've attacked members of our peerage. She moved a pawn up 2 spaces and asked, so what do you think we should do about it? His knight then took the pawn. They'll believe we've become weak and are unable to adequately defend our territory if we let this continue until they run us out. There will be more. We must take a firm stance and demonstrate to them that it was a bad idea to meddle with the Uzumaki and Gremory clans in the first place. Rias dislodged her queen from a dangerous position, only to have his bishop seize her throne. So you think we should make an example out of them? She inquired with disbelief. I thought you were all about peaceful solutions rather than violence. Normally, I would prefer to talk it out, but there's something strange about this whole situation, Naruto said, nodding as Rias used her own knight to capture his open knight. Why murder Sakura and Issei? I know they have sacred gears, but did they choose to kill them outright rather than win them over to their cause because they were afraid they would pose a threat? Asia as well. Twilight healing is her sacred gear. Before we came to defend them, Rainier seemed especially interested in her. So you think that this group of fallen angels went rogue from the main faction? Rias asked, nodding before casting with her king and remaining rook in an attempt to prolong the game. Rias was surprised when Naruto's pawn captured her queen because she had forgotten her queen's location on the board. It's the only explanation for why these fallen angels appear to be so ruthless, Naruto said, nodding. Unless they went rogue and were trying to pick a fight, none of our factions have done anything that would constitute an attack on the fallen angels, so they would have no reason to come into our turf. Rias moved her remaining pawn up a space, but Naruto's second bishop took the pawn that stood between her rook and king. Checkmate. I miss the days when I could beat you in chess with my eyes closed, Naruto-kun, Rias said, looking at the board and noticing that Naruto's bishop was in position to take her king or her remaining rook and was shielded by his queen. She could move her king in front of the bishop and next to the rook, but she couldn't take the bishop without putting herself in danger of the queen being overthrown. Naruto chuckled as the memories of his defeats at Rias' hands came to mind. I'm sure you do. For now, however, we should be making battle plans. Nodding tensely, Rias recalled that if they didn't defend their territories, others would think they could just walk in and take it from them. It was hard to imagine Naruto, who is generally a passive person, getting ready to fight against a potentially rogue group of fallen angels whose numbers they didn't know, but nothing he said wasn't false. If we send out both of our peerages, it would send a message that we aren't to be trifled with, Rias stated. A show of force, Naruto said. A good idea, especially since we don't know their numbers, but it would be extremely dangerous, provided the fallen angels' forces didn't back down, particularly considering that some of our own might be hit by friendly fire. After that, we'll dispatch a team of about 8 people to serve as a distraction. Just enough of them are drawn out so that a small group of 3 can enter the church with relative ease. That's also a good plan, Naruto said, nodding with his hands clasped together. But what if they were expecting devils to come through the front door? At the very least, they would have 3 or more fallen angels serving as lookouts and front guards on their own. Each would be fairly strong in addition, regardless of their apparent strength. They would request backup if they encountered unfavorable numbers. Only 1 or 2 members of the diversionary force would likely die in the conflict, but they could sustain serious injuries. So, what would you recommend? Naruto bit his lip. With the exception of sparring, very few people in my peerage have ever engaged in combat. You? Issei and Asia are the only ones who haven't fought, but they're still relatively new, and I haven't had time to properly train them, Rias said, nodding. Even Issei, who had some training on Sunday, is still inexperienced and can hardly compete in a real fight unless someone is keeping an eye on him. Rainier took advantage of his emotions and played him like a fool. Issei has something to prove. Naruto smirked. He will be able to fight and even defeat Rainier because of his growing attachment to Asia and his desire to protect her, even though he still feels some sort of attachment to her because she was the first attractive girl to ask him out. He ought to be part of the small force that infiltrates the church. If anything, Kiba despises fallen angels. As he mentioned in his introduction to my dismay, that deep-seated animosity will also prove useful in penetrating the church. I would consider sending Sakura and Ino too, Rias said, acknowledging Naruto's points with a nod. Sakura was killed by Rainier, and Ino fought her to keep her girlfriend safe. I have no doubt that they are seeking revenge of some kind. Sakura and Ino would undoubtedly want retribution, so Naruto grunted in comprehension. So we have 2 pawns, a rook, and a knight infiltrating the church. I propose sending 2 groups of 2 to 3 people if we are going to send a diversionary force to successfully complete their mission of diverting the forces of the fallen angel. They must be more powerful than the infiltration team given that our territories are being attacked. It is obvious that both of us would need to be present. Karen and Kuno will be joining me. You ought to bring Kaneko and Akeno along. Naruto nodded and said, why don't you bring Katase and Murayama along? 2 powerful attackers and someone who can either build a defense or serve as a shield for incoming attacks. They're exceptionally skilled fighters even as humans. I would if this weren't a potentially life-threatening situation, Naruto said, nodding. The truth is that they would still be killed until I could purchase them appropriate weapons, even though my runes would give them a strong defense that was far more effective than their knightly skills would permit. Rias arched an eyebrow and then turned to face Katase and Murayama, using her senses to feel and look for something. She wasn't sure what she was feeling or looking for, but she didn't understand what made them so unique that Naruto chose them as his knights. She asked incredulously, they don't have sacred gears, to which Naruto shook his head. So why revive them as your knights? Despite their talent, they don't have many advantages. Naruto laughed. You should know me better than that, he said scoldingly, making Rias blush as he looked down. Whether they're strong or not doesn't matter. Whether they have a unique quality that sets them apart from others, they will follow their hearts and do what they feel is right because they are committed to making the most of their circumstances. Like everyone in my peerage, they're my friends. All that matters to me is how strong their hearts are. Rias grinned and said, oh so, Naruto-kun, it's not because they are so gorgeous and would stop at nothing to win your approval? I think you should take them, Rias stated firmly before turning to face the blushing pair as Karen instructed them on how to properly protect Naruto's body. I think that they'll surprise you more than when we found out Sakura has twice critical, doubling her already incredible strength as a rook to insane levels, Rias said, as Naruto turned away with a pout. I'll bring them in addition to Karen and Kuno, Naruto said, looking hesitant at first. They can then learn how devils fight and what to expect in battle, at the very least. When it came to his safety, Rias would acknowledge that Karen was just as strong as Akeno when it came to her magic and could fully protect him, but she frequently wanted him to be more cautious and bring more protection, like now when the risks were so great. It was satisfying to her that Naruto was so willing to concede or acknowledge Rias' point, even if he had his own reasons for doing so that were entirely different from what Rias pointed out. Rias smiled at the boy she cared for before nodding. As an extra measure of security, Rias wanted the 2 Kendoka to accompany him, but Naruto saw this as a chance to help them develop as devils by demonstrating their potential and calming any current anxieties Rias might have. But for the time being, the 2 would share the plan with their peers tomorrow. Hell was raised by them. The devils planned to attack the fallen angel base of operations, with Asia staying as far back as possible under the protection of Hinata and Hanabi to serve as a support squad for the easy protection and effective healing of any injured. Naruto, Kuno, Karen, Katase, and Murayama would approach the back of the church to attract the majority of the enemy's forces, while Rias, Akeno, and Kaneko would approach the front door to attract the remaining forces. After this was done, Sakura, Ino, Issei, and Kiba would stealthily move around the fighting forces and attack any remaining enemies who chose to remain in case of a surprise attack, though the number of people ready for such an event would be incredibly small in comparison. Issei and Ino were informed by Naruto that since Rias and he had verbally recognized the church as enemy territory, they could promote without the consent of either of their kings. However, because of the short time Issei had been a devil, he would probably only be able to promote into a knight or rook, whereas Ino, being half-fallen angel and having practiced her magic for a much longer period of time than Issei, could do that in addition to being promoted to a bishop. Sakura was excited to see how her sacred gear, twice critical, would enhance her already potent melee skills as a rook, now that she had some knowledge of its capabilities. However, Naruto made her swear that she would never use it unless she was in danger or had to defend another member of the infiltration squad, telling her that if she became too dependent on twice critical, her own abilities would suffer by training her body and then enhancing it with twice critical. Her physical abilities would be unrivaled by anyone other than someone with a Longinus sacred gear. Unfortunately, Issei either disregarded Naruto's suggestion or believed it would make him stronger faster than what regular training and doing contracts would, and he disagreed with Naruto's reasoning. Sakura trusted Naruto to know what he was talking about, and she vowed not to use the gear unless she had to. When Naruto told Katase and Murayama that they would not be fighting unless they were compelled to by some unforeseen circumstance, they both nodded. Their purpose for attending was to learn about the fighting techniques of devils and fallen angels so that they would be ready in the future in case fallen angels ever broke the unwritten ceasefire and began hunting devils again. Without the right weapons, they would be essentially worthless in any battle situation until Naruto could purchase them weapons from the underworld during his subsequent visit. Rias and her group approached the front of the church while Naruto and his group approached the back. 3 fallen angels, 2 girls and a man, watched both groups warily from the trees. Normally, the trio would have attacked the group going to the front of the church, but the amount of power emanating from the group heading around back startled them mildly. It was a young night, and the street lamps lit up the dim streets in the hallway like a candle.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.